I went to prison after I stabbed William. Before getting locked up, everyone knew I was madly in love with William. When I got out, William knelt and begged me, "Cynthia, I'll give you my life. Can you love me one more time?" After loving William for 10 hard years, today I finally married him. But as we walked hand in hand into the church, he suddenly took a call. I watched his expression change from blank to ecstatic. Then he said, "Cynthia, Diana's back." He left in a hurry after saying that, leaving me to face a sea of pointing and whispering guests. That's Cynthia, the woman who hung around William without a name or status for 5 years, thinking she was finally marrying into wealth, only to be dumped on her wedding day. I stood there, feeling like the world was spinning. Of course, I'd heard the name Diana before. William's famous first love. But I had stayed with him for 5 years, nameless and titleless, bearing his children, and now he abandoned me on our wedding day for Diana. Lost and bewildered, someone tugged on my wedding dress. I looked down to meet my daughter Lucy's clear eyes. That snapped me back to reality. Amid all the guests' scornful looks, I fled with Lucy. I brought Lucy back home in a daze. Lucy hugged my neck and asked, "Mommy, where did Daddy go? Didn't he promise to tuck Lucy in tonight?" Listening to my daughter's innocent words, my heart felt like it was being clenched painfully. Holding back my emotions, I gently patted her head and said, "We'll find Daddy tomorrow. Let's sleep first." In the middle of the night, Lucy got a fever. She was so out of it that she wouldn't wake up no matter how I called. Terrified, I quickly carried her and had the driver take us to the White's private hospital. When we arrived, there wasn't a single doctor in sight, just a few nurses. Holding Lucy, I urgently asked the nurse, "Where are all the doctors?" The nurse told me, all the doctors were called to the VIP ward on the top floor by William. I rushed to the top floor with Lucy in my arms. Seeing William, my eyes immediately watered as I shook and said, "William, Lucy has a fever. Get a doctor to see her, quick." But William looked towards the ward and said, "Wait a minute." I was stunned. In the next moment, a gentle female voice said, "William, is the child sick?" Following the voice, I saw all the doctors gathered around a hospital bed, looking solemn. Lying on the bed was a pale, beautiful woman. That was Diana. In an instant, I felt like I was plunged into icy water, cold from head to toe. Diana considerately said, "Let the doctors see the child first." But William turned towards her, his usually cold face softening in a second. "You're more important." I felt a sharp pain spread from my heart to my entire body, nearly making me collapse. Finally, after Diana's kindness, Lucy was sent into the examination room clutching my belly. I sat outside the room, my face pale and my mind in chaos. I had been with William since I was 20, aware that Diana was his first love. Diana had been gone for 5 years, and in those 5 years, William never mentioned her name. Only occasionally, when drunk, would he whisper her name in bed. I thought his feelings for her had faded. But in reality, I underestimated Diana's hold over him. At that moment, William approached me, dressed in a suit and looking cold. I looked up, bewildered. "William, our wedding?" But before I could finish, he said, "Cancelled." He added, "And we're done too." My eyes welled up with tears. "You don't want me, not even our child?" But before I could finish, William cut me off coldly. "If you want it, keep it. If not, get rid of it." I felt like a sharp blade had been mercilessly thrust into my heart. The pain left me speechless. After a long pause, tears in my eyes, I croaked out, "William, this is our child." Everything felt too absurd now. Just last night, he held me, his deep voice promising me and the baby a home. I thought today would make me the happiest woman. Why did everything change the moment Diana came back? William surveyed me from above. With a hint of German lineage, under his sharp brow bones, his cobalt blue eyes were cold as Siberian snow. "The house you're staying in is yours. And child support, $200,000 a month, will be deposited into your account." His words seemed to choke my breath. As William turned to leave, I instinctively grabbed him. "Did you forget? Diana left you first." Back then, Diana left William when he was bedridden after a near-fatal accident during a fight for the inheritance. "Shut up. William's face darkened, his cobalt blue eyes and now a brewing storm. Meeting his terrifying gaze, I froze. I don't want to hear a single bad word about her. William shook me off and left. I stumbled back 2 steps, barely keeping my balance against the wall, watching his tall, cold figure disappear, my vision blurred. The sharp blade in my chest twisted, making it hard to breathe. So this is how he loved someone. As long as Diana was back, he didn't care about anything else. He could throw everything away. After that, I stayed by my daughter's bedside. William never came to see her. I didn't expect William, but Diana showed up instead. I looked at her warily. What are you doing here? Diana came to Lucy's bedside, her voice soft. I'm here to see you. I couldn't like this woman, no matter how friendly she acted. I gave a cold laugh. You abandoned William years ago, and now you're back. You ruined my wedding, and now you want to take my children's father away? Stop playing the victim here. To my surprise, Diana just sighed and gently touched Lucy's face. Don't worry, I'm not here to take him. Then she left the room. I felt like I had punched a pillow, confused and annoyed by Diana's attitude. Later that night, I had just put my daughter to sleep when William finally came to the room. I was happy, thinking he came to see our daughter, William. But before I could finish, he grabbed my neck. William's face was ice cold. What did you do to Diana? She passed out as soon as she got home. My face turned red as I struggled to get his hand off me. I didn't do anything. Just when I thought he was going to strangle me to death, William suddenly let go. I fell to the ground, coughing hard. My heart was breaking, tears streaming down my face. I didn't need a mirror to know how pathetic I looked. William didn't seem to believe me or care about my explanation. You think you're something because you have my kids. He crouched down, his long fingers lifting my chin. Before I could react to his words, I heard him coldly instruct the bodyguard beside him, get rid of the baby she's carrying. I was stunned, feeling like the sky had fallen on me just because Diana fainted. He wants to kill my baby. I looked at him in disbelief, tears in my eyes. William, are you crazy? Just when I thought William couldn't be any crueler, he did something even worse. William ignored me. The bodyguards dragged me into the surgery room. As I was strapped onto the surgical table, with the cold scalpel pressing against me, tears streamed down my face. At that moment, I truly felt William's heartlessness. For these 5 years, I fought with my parents and couldn't go home because of him. When he had a car accident, I was the only one by his side. To get him back into the company, I had to please his grandfather day and night. I thought these things would warm his heart. But I overestimated myself. I closed my eyes, giving up the struggle. Suddenly, a doctor rushed in. Stop. Through my blurry vision, I recognized Diana's treating doctor. I didn't know what he said to William, but William let me and my baby go. You can go. I fled back to the recovery room, shaking uncontrollably. Fearing William might want to abort the baby again, I held Lucy and hid at home. Once home, I felt safer. There were still decorations and balloons. A large area on the first floor was a children's zone with slides and other facilities. There was also a section with blue and pink cushions, a blue fence surrounding it, and toys for my unborn child, things William and I had set up together. I looked at everything in a daze, feeling lost. I couldn't understand how everything could change so drastically in just one day. All the happiness seemed like a dream. Suddenly, I felt a soft little hand move against my chest. Lucy hugged me, burying her head in my arms. Mommy, don't be afraid. Lucy will always be with you. I felt a lump in my throat, gently touching Lucy's head, trying to conceal my emotions. Mommy will make you some noodles. Okay. Lucy answered obediently. I put her down and went to the kitchen after composing myself. When I came out with the food, I was surprised to see Lucy playing in the play area with William. I froze. I thought he would be with Diana at the hospital, but he was here. Seeing Lucy's happy face, for a moment, I felt like everything was back to normal. Then William looked up at me. Take the child out. I snapped back to reality. The maid took Lucy away, leaving only William and me in the room. William approached, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, exuding an overpowering presence. His eyes were cold, and his voice hoarse. He said, "Diana has leukemia." I was stunned, feeling a cold laugh rising inside me. What does that have to do with me? William suddenly fell silent. My heart skipped a beat. The next second, I heard William say, "Lucy's bone marrow is a match for Diana." My mind went blank, my heart nearly stopped. "You want Lucy to donate bone marrow to Diana?" I was so angry my eyes turned red, my whole body trembling as I forced a sentence out. "No way. Our daughter is only 5. Do you want to send her to her death?" William was extremely unhappy, his long eyes cold and indifferent. "It's just a small surgery, why make it sound so serious?" I turned pale. A minor surgery could be life-threatening? I clenched my teeth. I will never agree to this, even if it kills me. William looked at me coldly. "How can you be so vicious? Just because you're jealous of Diana, you're willing to watch her die?" His words stabbed into my heart like a sharp knife. But let him say what he wants. Vicious, jealous, whatever. I still won't agree. Seeing my reaction, William said flatly, "It doesn't matter if you don't agree. I'm also Lucy's guardian. Lucy has already signed the consent form. The surgery is scheduled for 2 weeks from now." It was only then that I noticed the bone marrow donation consent form on the table. Images of William playing with Lucy flashed in my mind, hitting me like a lightning bolt. I looked at him, disbelief in my voice. "You're her father, William?" He remained unfazed and walked away without another word. In an instant, my heart sank. I was engulfed by helplessness and panic. I didn't know what to do. I went to my room, sitting by the bed where Lucy was sleeping peacefully. My heart ached, and tears streamed down my face. Lucy adored her father. If she knew that her dad wanted to risk her life for another woman, how devastated would she be? I sat by her bed all night. The next morning, after instructing the nanny to take good care of Lucy, I headed to the White's private hospital. Diana was alone in the ward. I went straight to her. "Diana, if you have any issues, take them out on me. Why involve a 5-year-old child?" Diana smiled calmly. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Her calmness made me look even more frantic. My throat tightened with grief and anger. Seducing someone else's husband and targeting a child, getting leukemia, is just karma. Diana's eyes went cold before she feigned confusion. "Whose husband did I seduce? Are you and William married?" My face turned pale. Everyone in Philadelphia knew that William had abandoned me for Diana halfway through our wedding. Now, I'm just William's nameless lover. At that moment, William's angry voice came from the door. "Cynthia, stop making a scene. Diana doesn't know about the bone marrow. It was my decision." He walked in with large strides, blocking Diana from my view, staring at me coldly. Almost confirming his words, Diana pretended just to find out about it. "William, how can I take a child's bone marrow?" "It's okay, I can wait longer." William turned to her, his eyes gentle and filled with affection. "You're too kind, always thinking of others." As I listened, enraged, feeling as if submerged in glacial water, I watched as William embraced Diana tenderly. It was as if they had never been apart. My years with William suddenly seemed non-existent. Clutching my chest, my body swayed, my world tipping over. William glanced at me, then coldly instructed his guards, "Take her away." Just then, the attending physician who came in with William said, "Mr. William, I've checked the baby in Cynthia's womb. The baby's cord blood can match Diana's and be used in her surgery." Hope sparked in my heart as I grabbed William's hand, pleading, "William, I'll give the cord blood to Diana, just spare Lucy." He looked down at me as my heart clenched continuously. Fortunately, he finally nodded in agreement. I stumbled out of the ward. Outside the hospital, I unexpectedly ran into an old college friend. "Cynthia, are you all right?" My old friend looked at my expression cautiously. I heard Diana's back. "Are things okay between you and William?" I could only force a smile. "We're fine." My friend sighed in relief. "That's good. After all, it's been so many years, and everyone has settled down." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean?" My friend seemed surprised. "Didn't you know? Diana got married abroad." Watching my friend walk away, my body felt numb. Diana was married. Did William know? After returning home, I immediately asked a friend to investigate Diana's past 5 years abroad. The results came quickly. The friend told me over the phone, Diana got married 5 years ago to a foreign man. They had a son. When she got sick, she tested her son's bone marrow, and it was a match. Hearing this, anger surged through me, clenching my fists tightly. I finally understood. Diana's goal in returning was all along for Lucy's bone marrow. I rushed out of the house to find William. Unexpectedly, I ran into William and Diana at the door. I asked in disbelief, "Why are you bringing her home?" William answered calmly, "From today on, this is Diana's home." I felt like I'd been hit hard in the chest. I threw the information my friend sent me right in front of William. "Do you know she's married and has a kid?" "She's been lying to you the whole time." William froze, about to open the file. Diana suddenly broke the silence. "Yes, I am married." I looked at her in shock, not expecting her to admit it so quickly. But then, Diana's eyes turned red, filled with deep affection as she looked at William. "When you were like that, my dad forced me to marry someone overseas. I told myself I had to forget you, but I just couldn't. So I dropped everything to come back and find you. I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I can't control my heart. I just didn't expect that when I came back, I'd find out I have leukemia." Her words made me nauseous, and I couldn't stand it. I interrupted loudly, "Diana, stop lying. Enough." William's eyes showed both guilt and sympathy for Diana. He threw the file on the ground, looking indifferent. "You don't need to try and turn us against each other. I already know she's been married, and I don't care." His words felt like a hard slap in my face, leaving me dizzy and disoriented. My eyes reddened with disbelief, and I blurted out, "You believe these lies, William? You're being a fool, you know that?" My words were cut off by an angry slap from William. Fire seemed to flicker in his dark eyes. "Move out immediately. I don't want you disturbing Diana." With that, William supported Diana into the villa. As I watched them walk away, my tears flowed uncontrollably. 2 hours later, I finished packing. Dragging my suitcase, I ran into Diana at the staircase. Clenching the suitcase handle tightly, I forced my last bit of pride, expressionless. "You won." Diana approached me, speaking softly. "You look so pitiful, part of me almost feels sorry for you." I sneered, "You don't love him. You're just using him. Once the baby is born and you have surgery, you'll leave him." "You're right. But..." Diana's eyes turned cold. "I don't plan to wait that long." I shivered, not having the chance to respond before Diana pushed me hard down the stairs. The intense pain hit me, and I felt the blood spreading beneath me. Terrified and desperate, before losing consciousness, I vaguely saw Lucy crying and running toward me, "Mommy." When I woke up, the scent of disinfectant filled my nose. Before I even opened my eyes, I heard Diana's feeble voice, "William, I don't know how she fell." William gently comforted her, "It's not your fault." I felt immense anger and sorrow. Struggling to open my eyes, I heard a sharp child's voice beside the bed, "No. Daddy, it was that bad woman who pushed Mommy." Lucy's words brought silence to the room. William scolded, "Lucy, who taught you to lie?" Lucy immediately started crying. "It was that bad woman. I saw it with my own eyes." Hearing her cry, my heart ached and anger surged. Somehow finding strength, I sat up from the bed, bending over to hold Lucy protectively. "Lucy never lies." Unexpectedly, William turned his anger toward me. "Cynthia, to fuel your jealousy, you'd even use a child." His harsh words pierced my heart. I held Lucy tightly, covering her ears. Seeing William's loathing eyes, my rage turned to sorrow. My voice cracked, "You're scaring Lucy." Diana stepped forward gently. "William, don't be too hard on Cynthia. She just lost her child and is weak." But her words struck me like a bolt from the blue. I murmured, "My child. Gone." Touching my stomach, I realized I could no longer feel the baby. My heart clenched. The child only stayed with me for 2 months and 10 days. Glancing at Diana's smug look, I said suddenly, "We can check the surveillance to see if Lucy lied." Diana's face changed, her hand covering her forehead. "William, I don't feel well." With that, she collapsed into his arms. William, worried, picked her up and left the room. "Doctor." William's urgent voice, calling the doctor, felt like needles piercing my heart. Our child was gone, yet all he cared about was Diana's discomfort. I sat numbly on the hospital bed, hearing Lucy's muffled voice in my arms. "Mommy, why won't Daddy believe me?" Snapped out of my thoughts, I forced out a reassuring smile. "Daddy is mad right now. Once he calms down, you can explain, and he will believe you." After that, Lucy was taken back to the villa, and I stayed in the hospital to recover. From the chatting nurses, I found out Diana's illness was severe and she needed immediate surgery. That night, William came. I had a bad feeling. "Why are you here?" As expected, he immediately said, "Lucy needs to." My heart sank. I picked up the doll by the pillow, carefully smoothing its dress, looking at his expression, cutting him off. "This doll, you made for Lucy yourself. She can't sleep without it every night. You work late often, and Lucy waits for you every night until I coax her to sleep." William, expressionless, assured me, "I'll make it up to her." My face paled further. He insisted on Lucy donating bone marrow. Gritting my teeth, I knelt and clutched his pants, crying and pleading, "William, I won't go against Diana anymore. Both our kids can match her. Maybe we can even have another one. It doesn't have to be Lucy, she's too young to bear it." William looked down at me. After a moment, he pulled his leg away and left the room. Once he was gone, my face turned cold and emotionless. I dragged my aching body back to the villa and secretly took Lucy away from the servants. I headed straight home. I waited at the door for 2 hours before seeing a refined-looking middle-aged couple approach. I quickly held Lucy's hand and walked up to them. "Dad, Mom," I said. My dad's face fell. My nose stung, and I patted Lucy's head. "Lucy, call them Grandpa and Grandma." Lucy looked up timidly and said, "Grandpa, Grandma." My parents still didn't respond. I immediately knelt down, which startled both of them. My mom bent down to help me up. "What's wrong? Did William treat you badly?" I lowered my head, feeling a sharp pain in my chest. "Did William treat me well? Other than giving me money, he always had a cold face towards me, never even smiled at me. Followed him for years without a title, ridiculed by those around him. He knew it but never cared. When I gave birth, he was busy with business deals." My chest ached again, and I hit my head on the ground, choking up. "Dad, Mom, I'm in trouble. Please take care of Lucy for a while. You're still so stubborn." My dad yelled angrily. "I told you before, if you don't cut ties with William, I don't have a daughter like you. Don't bother with her, let's go inside." My dad then walked into the house. My mom hesitated, looked at my pleading eyes, and finally picked up Lucy, crying as she went inside. Listening to Lucy's cries, I broke down in tears too before covering my face and taking a cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. I was dazed. "Just drive around." The driver started the car. I was lost in my sorrow. When we passed a square, I looked up and saw the news on the big screen. A century wedding. White's Group CEO William proposes to Diana. My face turned pale. I clutched my clothes tightly, my nails digging into my flesh without feeling the pain. He was going to marry Diana. What did that make me? The driver pulled up to the White's Group. I walked into the top floor office. William looked at me coldly. "Cynthia, causing trouble at home and in the hospital wasn't enough? Now you've come to the office?" His icy expression felt like a bucket of cold water poured over me. My swollen eyes fixed on him. "Are you really going to marry Diana? Who I marry has nothing to do with you." My heart felt crushed. I held onto the table for support, my eyes filled with tears. "William, after all these years, what am I to you? I broke ties with my family, bore your child without any status." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by indifference. He called security. "Take her out." I was thrown out of the building. Standing on the street, I realized I had nowhere to go suddenly. I realized I was homeless. I found a random hotel to stay in. A few days later, William came looking for me. He didn't show any concern, just demanded, "Where's Lucy?" I expected this day to come, but seeing his angry face was still amusing. "Lucy is in a safe place. You'll never find her," I said calmly. William's face turned frosty. "Cynthia, I underestimated you. No matter where you hide her, I will find a way." No one had ever escaped his control, hence his loss of composure. William didn't want to say more and turned to leave. I grabbed his sleeve tightly. "Don't go. Why can't you leave Lucy alone?" But William remained unmoved, pulling his sleeve away and leaving. I fell to the ground, shouting at his back, "William, if anything happens to Lucy, I'll haunt you forever." During that time, I worried and wanted to contact my mom. But knowing William's methods, I didn't dare, fearing he'd find out. Still, he found out. William's assistant took me to his office. William handed me a tablet. A trending news story appeared: graduate student accuses professor of harassment. My heart sank. The professor in the news was my dad. That's impossible. My dad was upright and strict. He wouldn't even acknowledge me after my premarital pregnancy. This was slander. But then I realized it was William's doing. My dry eyes turned to him in disbelief. "Why did you do this?" William looked at me without any emotion. "If your dad returns Lucy, this news will disappear." This was his usual method. A chill ran through me. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my mom. My heart stopped for a moment, a bad feeling washing over me. With trembling hands, I answered. My mom's hoarse voice came through. "Your dad. He hanged himself." The phone slipped from my grasp, its screen cracking into pieces. My heart felt like it was being ripped apart. I was gasping for breath, pressing my chest hard. Now, I no longer had a father. And I hadn't even told him I was sorry. I rushed at William, pounding on him. "William, it's you. You killed my dad. My dad valued his reputation more than anything. You destroyed his name. It's like you killed him." William grabbed my hands, his expression unchanged. "If you don't want your dad to carry this stigma even after death, bring Lucy back to me." After he finished talking, he just shook me off and walked away. I collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down my face. After a while, I picked up my phone from the ground and rushed out to hail a cab home. As soon as I got out of the cab, I saw a bunch of reporters gathered at the door. They were surrounding my mom, who was dressed in black, with a white chrysanthemum pinned on her chest, looking heartbroken. The reporters were bombarding her with questions, each one stabbing at my heart. Did Professor John commit suicide because he knew he was guilty and wanted to escape punishment? As his wife, did you already know about his crimes and chose to cover them up? My mom argued, my husband didn't do this. He spent his life teaching, imparting moral principles, and would never do something like this. Even in death, you won't let him rest. Because she spoke so forcefully, my mom started coughing violently. But the reporters were clearly unsatisfied and kept pressing her. I pushed through the reporters and rushed to protect my mom. My dad would never do such a thing. This is slander. But my appearance only made the reporters more excited. "Cynthia, Mr. William announced his marriage. Are you his mistress? With a daughter like you, how can we believe your father wasn't a hypocrite and a scoundrel?" I was filled with anger and wanted to argue, but not a single word came out. I bit my lip and glanced at the photo of my dad that my mom was holding. His eyes were still bright and full of life. It took me back 5 years, to when I had just started seeing William. My dad had been so earnest. William is the type who, once he's set his heart on someone, won't care about anyone else. He already has someone. He can't possibly love you. I've taught you to love yourself since you were a child, but you've gone crazy for a man. Get out. Get out of my house. I have no daughter like you. My dad's words echoed in my ears, and I felt a heart-wrenching pain. I finally regretted my past actions. If I hadn't gotten involved with William, my dad wouldn't be in this situation. At that moment, I hated myself more than I hated William. Suddenly, my mom pushed the reporters away and stood in front of me. This has nothing to do with my daughter. Some people just have no conscience or basic morality. Looking at my mom's back, my heart trembled, and tears started falling. My mom said resolutely, "My husband couldn't have done this. I can stake my life on it." After saying that, she suddenly ran toward the wall while holding the photo. Everyone was stunned. The once bustling morning hall fell silent, so quiet you could hear breathing. My mom collapsed to the ground, blood oozing from her forehead, which stung my eyes. I felt a heart-wrenching pain. Mom. My mom was taken to the nearest private hospital, the Whites, by ambulance. I stood outside the emergency room like a walking corpse. I thought things couldn't get worse, but something even more despairing happened. I overheard two nurses talking. "Today, Mr. William's favorite woman is having surgery, and the hospital director himself is performing it. I heard the donor is a little girl. She kept crying and calling for her parents during the surgery. So pitiful. I heard that she's Mr. William's biological daughter. How could he bear it?" It felt like a bolt from the blue, and I was frozen in place. I didn't hear what they said next. I rushed toward the operating room. When I got there, I saw William standing tall. The doctor was pushing a gurney covered with a white sheet. A small, pale hand stuck out from underneath. In that moment, I couldn't breathe. The doctor removed his mask and reported to William, "Mr. William, Diana's surgery was successful with no signs of rejection, but Lucy didn't make it. She's gone." William stood there, stunned. My mind buzzed, and I stumbled forward to the gurney, trembling as I lifted the sheet to reveal Lucy's face, white as a sheet. She lay there silently. My voice was gone, and my tears fell as I sobbed at her bedside. "Lucy, wake up and look at Mommy. Mommy is here." But there would be no response. My countless words turned into one cry of agony. William tried to pull me away. "Cynthia, calm down." His voice made my anger explode. I lunged at William, ready to fight. "William, give me back Lucy." William lowered his eyes, looking pained. "I didn't expect this to happen. I'll compensate Lucy with the best cemetery to give her peace." Just then, the doctor informed William that Diana had woken up. The sorrow on William's face vanished, replaced by joy. He pushed me aside and walked away. I fell heavily beside the gurney, near Lucy's pale face. At that moment, it felt like all my strength had left me. The doctor awkwardly said, "Cynthia, it's time to take Lucy to the morgue." Someone tried to move the gurney, but I found strength from somewhere, pushed them away, and grabbed the surgical knife from the doctor's chest, threatening, "Stay away. No one is taking my daughter." The people around were shocked by my appearance and stepped back. I held Lucy, not letting anyone near her. Just days ago, she had been crying and saying, "Mommy, I don't want to leave you." I was waiting to bring Lucy back. But now, my daughter had become a cold corpse. I don't know how long passed, but a nurse approached me sympathetically. "Cynthia, the patient you brought in earlier didn't make it. She's gone." My mind felt glued shut, unable to think. After a while, I caressed my daughter's cold face and, like a puppet, said, "Understood." Ever since that day, I vanished with my mom and Lucy. William was probably too busy taking care of Diana to send anyone to look for me. 2 months later, on William and Diana's wedding day, I showed up again. Just as they stood before the priest about to exchange rings. I pushed open the doors to the banquet hall and walked in. I scanned the wedding scene. The grand castle accentuated the solemnity and ritual of the wedding. The vibrant flowers and light diffused a sweet and warm atmosphere. Compared to my own wedding preparations, this was much more luxurious. The guests were the same ones from my and William's wedding. I could feel their curious and disdainful glances on me. But I didn't care. I walked down the white carpet, step by step, until I was in front of William. "Congratulations, you finally got what you wanted." William's face darkened, his eyes a cold warning. "Cynthia, this is my wedding, don't make a scene." I asked him, "You killed your daughter, do you have even a shred of regret?" William frowned impatiently. At that moment, Diana stepped forward, as weak as ever. Cynthia, I'm sorry, Lucy did it to save me. I shouted coldly, shut up, you don't deserve to mention Lucy. Cynthia. William also snapped at me in a cold tone. He then turned his head to gently comfort Diana. Diana, don't take it to heart. Lucy was so kind, saving a life. I'm sure she was happy when she left. Watching their tender display made me sick, and the fire in my heart was almost consuming me. Yet, my tone was unusually calm. You used him. He willingly let you use him, even gave you his daughter. You guys really are a perfect match. But while your love is fulfilled, who remembers my Lucy? William interrupted me, commanding, don't mention Lucy again. Leave now. I watched his mouth move, without a trace of guilt. My daughter's pale face, my father's black and white photo, my mother's crimson blood from banging her head against the wall, all flashed before my eyes. This man, he drove my parents to death, killed my child, and now he still dares to order me around with such righteousness. Just because he thinks I love him so much I would debase myself. I stared at William intensely, then suddenly smiled. In the next moment, I drew out a scalpel and plunged it decisively into William's heart. The knife pierced through his suit, into his skin. Warm blood splattered, spraying onto my face. William's eyes widened in disbelief. You. I looked at him calmly, ignoring the horror around me, and pushed the scalpel deeper. Lucy told me in a dream she misses her daddy, so go to hell and be with her. William collapsed to the ground. The guests were shocked by the sudden turn of events. Murder. They scrambled to their feet, some fleeing, others calling the police, but no one came to stop me. At this point, Diana shrieked. Catching my attention, I turned my bloody face towards Diana and suddenly grinned. If it weren't for her shriek, I would have forgotten about her. Holding the scalpel, I walked towards Diana, blood dripping off the tip. I watched her face twist in terror, feeling more and more exhilarated. She never expected me to do something this insane. My face was splattered with blood, combined with my expression. It made Diana shudder and she backed away in fear. Diana started, her voice trembling. Cynthia, don't come any closer. I paused, then continued walking towards her. Diana said again, Cynthia, think about it. If your parents knew you killed someone, they'd be heartbroken. I didn't really care, but I stopped for a moment to see her hopeful look. For William, I used a swift slash because he deserved to die. But Diana, she was more malicious than William. Lucy had to be in so much pain to give her bone marrow. You're right, it would be great if this anger could bring them back to life. Realizing her words weren't working, Diana kept running, circling the stage toward the door. Watching her flee made me happy. I wasn't in a hurry to chase, walking leisurely. Yet, just as she reached the door, Diana tripped over her dress and fell to the ground. I caught up to her quickly, squatted down, straddled her body with my legs, grabbed her veil, and pressed the bloody scalpel to her neck. I looked into Diana's wide, almost bulging eyes with satisfaction. I was ready to raise the knife for the final strike, to avenge Lucy, when she trembled and said, You can't kill me. I asked, puzzled, why not? I have the same blood as your daughter in me. Her words made me pause, and I moved the scalpel away. You're right, your body has Lucy's blood in it. I can't just kill you and taint Lucy's blood with your filth. So. Before Diana could feel relief, I slashed her with the scalpel. I need to drain your blood first, then kill you. Diana screamed in pain, her body trembling, maybe because of leukemia's after effects, making her extremely afraid of bleeding. I watched Diana grow weaker beneath me, her skin turning pale, just like Lucy's. It was time. I had to avenge my dad, my mom, and my 2 kids. I raised the scalpel, ready to stab the barely alive Diana, but just then, sirens wailed outside. The door was kicked open with a loud bang, and a beam of light pierced my eyes. I shielded my eyes as a commanding voice shouted, Don't move. I was surrounded. Cold handcuffs clamped around my wrists, and they took me away. I glanced at William and Diana lying in pools of blood and laughed indifferently. So what if they were dead? Mom, Dad, Lucy, and my unborn baby, did you see? I avenged you. I was brought to the interrogation room. Several officers in dark blue uniforms began questioning me. Why did you kill them? They asked, But I remained indifferent and didn't answer. Seeing my silence, one of them angrily slapped the table. Do you know you killed 2 people? At least you'll get life in prison. I still didn't speak. I had no family left, my enemies were dead. Even if they sentenced me to death, I'd thank the judge. Actually, I wished for the death penalty over life in prison. But they didn't like my attitude, and they were furious. What kind of attitude is this? Time passed slowly. Then, an officer came in and whispered something to the one interrogating me before leaving. I sensed this might be important. I got excited and leaned forward a bit. What did he say? The officer told me, the hospital called. Both of your victims survived. I couldn't accept this. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to rush out. No way, that's impossible. How could this be? I personally stabbed William in the heart and watched him collapse, lifeless. But he lived. And Diana, I drained her blood, how did she survive? They forced me back into my seat, their voices stern. Sit down. Luckily, they survived, the officer explained. The one you stabbed in the left chest, his heart is on the right, so he lived. The one who lost a lot of blood, we got there in time to save her. You won't serve 20 years. I clutched my head in frustration. They should have died. I should have stabbed them more. Why do good people die early, and bad ones live so long? As I wallowed in regret, the officers gathered my information. You've hurt people, you should repent. My eyes reddened as I looked at them. I wanted them dead. They killed my 2 kids. Diana needed my daughter's bone marrow because she had leukemia. My daughter was only 5 years old. And William, even as the child's father, could be so cruel. Not even a beast does that. He doesn't deserve to live. I had agreed to save the cord blood when my baby was born to do her surgery, but she couldn't wait and pushed me down the stairs. I lost my baby. And my parents, they killed them too. I have no family left, why should they live? Why? I screamed until my voice was hoarse, gripping the edge of the table, its sharp corner cutting into my palm, but I didn't feel pain. The officers were silent after hearing my story. On trial day, I saw William. He wore a suit, looking pristine. I was in a prison uniform, dirty and stained. Since William and Diana didn't die, I was sentenced to 3 years for intentional injury. As I was led away, I locked eyes with William in the witness stand. I looked at him, my face full of hatred. William seemed shocked by the hatred in my eyes. Why did you want to kill me? He asked. I spoke numbly, because I hate you. It was my blindness that made me love you. Officer, take me away. Finished, I didn't care what expression William had, and I was taken away. 3 years later, out in the open world again. Live well. The rusty, battered prison gate opened, and I walked out. The warm sunlight hit me. Seeing the blue sky beyond the fence made me feel unexpectedly calm. Suddenly, a shadowy voice spoke up. Cynthia. I stiffened and turned to see a blue Rolls-Royce parked not far away, with William leaning against it. Dressed in a black suit, he cut a tall and slender figure, highlighted by broad shoulders and a narrow waist. His stern eyebrows and sharp facial lines, and cobalt blue eyes glinted under the sunlight. Standing nearly 6 feet tall, he exuded an overwhelming presence, as if he ruled the world, completely out of place with the surroundings. I stood still as painful memories from 3 years ago flooded back, suffocating me. I wanted to run, but William was already in front of me, his cold voice asking, "Where do you think you're going?" I lowered my head and shook it. Where could I go? I was penniless and homeless. Seeing me so submissive, William let out a cold laugh. Cynthia, you've really changed a lot. Where did that fierceness go when you stabbed me? Lowering my head again, he grabbed my chin tightly, forcing me to look at him. Look at me. Why don't you dare to look at me? My chin hurt as if he would dislocate it. I saw my face reflected in his cobalt blue eyes, thin, pale, messy hair, lifeless. 3 years, and my resentment hasn't faded. I shoved him hard. Why should I be afraid to look at you? You're the one who made me like this. It should be you who's afraid to look at me, I continued. For 3 years, every time I close my eyes, I see the faces of my dead family members. And you? Do you think of the 2 kids when you close your eyes? William's face darkened. Cynthia. I sneered. What, you mad now? William's face turned even darker. Cynthia, I'm here to get you. Out of old times sake, don't push it. Come with me. I kept my face cold. I don't ever want to see you again. I'm not going with you. William made a move, but I threatened, this is the gate of a prison, so many people here. You planning to kidnap me? Even if William controls Philly, he wouldn't dare kidnap someone right at the prison gate. I managed to walk away. 3 years, and Philly is still the same old city, filled with decadence. I'm broke now, so I need to find a job. But I know someone like me. Nobody's gonna hire me. I ended up looking for a job where they provide room and board. I found work at a factory screwing parts together. I used to be a bright student, and now I'm stuck here screwing parts. But to my surprise, I got fired after just 1 day. Sorry, we don't have the right qualifications to hire you, they said. I left, feeling dejected. Tired and hungry, I wandered the streets. Then I saw a job posting for a dishwasher at a small restaurant. My eyes lit up, and I volunteered. I can do it. No pay needed, just food. The lady boss glanced at me. All right, come on. I bowed, filled with joy. Thank you. But just 10 minutes into washing dishes, the lady boss came out and told me to leave. We don't want you. Why? I asked. She crossed her arms and gave me a look. Think about it. Did you offend someone important? My heart sank. The only important person I offended is William. Despite how low I've fallen, he still won't leave me alone. I wandered the streets, still without food or a place to stay. I found a spot under a bridge. But as soon as I sat down, a group of homeless guys started eyeing me like hungry wolves. I was scared and turned in another direction, hugging myself. But they didn't leave me alone. They came closer, touching me. I felt hands grabbing me everywhere. I fought back against the homeless men. Get away, get away. But it only led to more rough treatment. In the struggle, my clothes were torn. I felt a cold breeze on my skin. Just when I lost all hope, a group of people appeared and drove the homeless men away. Cynthia, without me, you're nothing but a wretched dog. William's voice came from above me. Opened my eyes to see him standing there, looking down at me. Tears flowed uncontrollably as I hugged myself tighter. Seeing me like this, are you happy now? William's presence exuded coldness. No, I'm not. When you dared to stab me back then, you should have known there would be a price to pay. I followed William back to the mansion. I knew I couldn't fight him. I thought I wasn't afraid to die, that I'd rather starve to death outside. But I couldn't stand the thought of dying while my enemy lived well. Back at the mansion, everything looked the same. I glanced at the shiny white floor, remembering the scene from years ago when Diana pushed me down the stairs. The bloodstains still haunted me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Why did you bring me back? You're not thinking of keeping me here, are you? William looked down at me, lips curling in disdain. Dream on. From now on, you're the lowest servant here. That's how you'll pay for your crimes against Diana and me. I stood there, stunned, my face still blank. Seeing no reaction, William seemed to get angrier. He ordered the butler, from now on, she gets all the dirty and tiresome work. As soon as he finished, the butler handed me a rag. I took it and started cleaning. I cleaned from the 3rd floor down to the 1st, even the basement. Everyone else was asleep while I kept wiping and scrubbing. After a night of hard work, my stomach ached with hunger. I saw William sitting at the breakfast table. I stared at him until he noticed. You want to eat? He asked. I licked my dry lips. William picked up a bun and handed it to me. Just as I reached out, he dropped it to the floor. Eat. But he underestimated me. I picked up the bun and ate it, savoring every bite. In prison, people often bullied me, threw my food on the ground. Just to have a bite, I learned to not care about cleanliness. As long as it was food, I'd eat it. This seemed to infuriate William further. With a sneer, he tossed out, "You really don't mind dirt, huh?" And walked away, my eyes dimmed. Is this really how I want to live? Like a dog? During the day, William would usually be at work, away from home. I was in the garden, doing gardening work. The other two helpers lounged nearby. I looked at them. "Aren't you gonna do anything?" One of them smirked. "Mister. William said all the dirty work is yours. So, nope, we don't have to do anything." "What, you gonna complain to Mr. William? You think he'll side with you?" I had no response. William was intent on tormenting me. Everything was happening just the way he wanted. One of the helpers chuckled. "Better hurry. You still need to clean the toilets." After I finished working in the garden, I went to clean the toilet. Back in prison, I was weak and powerless, while the other inmates were united. I was no match for them. I ended up doing all the chores, including cleaning the toilet. When I came out after cleaning the toilet, I was surprised to see someone surrounded by servants. It was Diana. She was wearing a white dress, her skin fair, exuding a noble elegance with a touch of fragility. I, on the other hand, still smelled like air freshener. Diana's soft face turned dark when she saw me. "Cynthia, what are you doing here?" I wasn't expecting to see Diana here. After all, I'd been here for 2 days without seeing her. Judging by her expression, I could tell William hadn't told her I was here. "I have nowhere to go," I replied. "William told me to stay here and work as a servant." Diana looked me up and down, her voice sharp as she saw my maid outfit. "William made you a servant? Fine. As a servant, you'll take good care of me." She emphasized the last part. I had a bad feeling about this. Diana sat by the pool, sent everyone else away, leaving just the two of us. Her tone remained soft and weak. "Get me a glass of juice." She was still putting on her usual act, making me despise her. I stood still, my eyes clear and focused on her. "Aren't you afraid I'll poison your juice?" Diana's expression changed. She walked to the poolside, took off her necklace, and threw it into the pool. "Fetch it for me." I didn't move. "Why should I?" A sinister look flashed across Diana's proud face. "Get it, or I'll dig up your daughter's grave." "You!" I clenched my fists, glaring at her in anger. "Will you fetch it or not?" For Lucy's peace, I jumped in immediately. Instantly, the cold water soaked through me, making me shiver. I could swim, William had taught me himself. When I retrieved Diana's necklace and was about to climb out, she suddenly kicked me hard, sending me back into the pool. I choked on water and resurfaced, gasping for air. Diana stood by the edge, full of hatred. "If it weren't for you, my body wouldn't be this weak." I felt a sense of satisfaction. Looks like not killing you back then was the right choice. No matter how hard you try to find bone marrow, you won't save yourself. It's your karma. Diana's face twisted. She refused to let me out, leaving me in the pool all afternoon until I was exhausted and nearly passed out. Just then, someone dived in and pulled me out. I coughed violently, and when I regained my senses, I saw a soaking wet William. His eyes showed worry. "Are you okay?" He actually cared about me? I was a bit dazed. Did I still have a place in his heart? But then Diana's soft voice chimed in. "William, I asked Cynthia to fetch my necklace from the pool, but she almost drowned. You know how weak I am. That's why I hesitated at the edge. It's my fault." I coldly laughed inside and handed the clenched necklace to her, my voice weak. "Don't lose it again." I turned to leave, but William grabbed my hand. "Don't you have anything to say?" I stiffly turned to look at him. What should I say? That Diana deliberately refused to let me out, making me stay in the water all afternoon to drown? Just like she pushed me down the stairs years ago, killing my child? Lucy saw it happen. You didn't believe it then, will you believe it now if I say it's on purpose? Diana looked hurt. How could I do such a thing? Before William could respond, the servants suddenly rushed in. Mr. William, we saw it clearly outside. This woman stayed in the water on purpose. Furious, William kicked me back into the water. Cynthia, I can't believe you're still pulling the same act to frame Diana. Tonight, even if she dies in the water, no one is to pull her out. Standing in the water, I felt more pain in my heart than in the kicked spot. I laughed bitterly, no longer hoping for anything from William. William stood on the edge, looking down at me. Why are you laughing? Shivering in the water, I replied, laughing at how deep your love for her is. I glanced up at the pool's security camera. You can check the footage to see the truth. The butler stepped forward with an air of certainty. The camera's broken. Everyone was twisting the truth. William snorted and then left, supporting Diana. To prevent me from climbing out, he assigned 2 people to watch me. Had already been in the pool for a long time, and soon I passed out from weakness. When I woke up the next day, I was in the nanny's room. Rising from the bed, I felt thirsty and dizzy. I touched my forehead, it was burning. I had a fever. Being in the water all night, how could I not get sick? Before I could rest, a servant walked in, bossing me around. Cynthia, you're here to work, not to enjoy yourself. Who do you think you are? Get up, the master wants to see you in the living room. I groggily got up and followed her to the living room. There, William and Diana were on the couch, kissing. William's hand was on. Well, an indescribable part of Diana. The sight was so intense, it felt like a hammer to my heart, causing a dull ache. Finally, they pulled apart. I lowered my eyes, my voice hoarse. Why did you call me here? William ignored me and picked up a box containing a diamond necklace, looking quite expensive. He personally put the necklace around Diana's neck. This is for you. I was stunned. Did he call me to watch him give jewelry to Diana? Not feeling well? William looked at me, a smirk on his lips. Why pretend? If you're jealous, just say it. My lips moved. Why would I be jealous? William's demeanor changed. Just then, Diana clung to William and offered kindly, William, every time I see Cynthia, I think of Lucy. She saved me, but I never did anything for her. How about we help rebuild her grave? I immediately remembered Diana's words from yesterday. She said she wanted to dig up Lucy's grave. No way. I shouted, face red with anger. I grabbed a nearby fruit knife and lunged at Diana. Diana, you've gone too far. You won't touch Lucy's remains. Diana turned pale and hid behind William. But this time, William didn't protect her like he used to. He only had eyes for me. William stepped forward and snatched the knife from my hand. Cynthia, are you trying to kill someone? I was held in his arms, feeling dizzy. Weakly, I said, let me go, I need to kill her. But in reality, I was seeing double of William. Mumbling those words, I fainted. As I passed out, I seemed to see William rushing toward me, cradling me in his arms. Get the doctor. Diana was left behind, looking incredulous. When I woke up, I was in a luxurious room. I recognized it immediately, it was the master bedroom. You're awake, William's deep voice came from the side. I tried to get up from the bed and remove the 4 in my hand. William stopped me. What are you doing? I looked at him with disgust. This is your room with Diana. It makes me sick. Sick. Why do you feel sick? What right do you have to feel sick? William's face darkened. He held my hands with one hand and grabbed the back of my head with the other, kissing me on the lips. His kiss was forceful, prying open my mouth, and roaming inside. Thinking about him kissing Diana made me feel nauseous and furious. I pushed him away without restraint and started to gag. William's face was grim, his voice laced with anger. Cynthia, you're something else. In a fit of rage, he turned and left. But in the following days, I didn't have to work anymore. When I was well enough, William came to find me, accompanied by several men in black uniforms. One of them held a dress. It was a revealing bodycon dress. I have a banquet to attend. "You're coming with me." With that, he didn't give me a chance to refuse and had them do my makeup. When the makeup was done, I almost looked like my old self. Seeing the dress gave me a bad feeling. "I'm not wearing it." William's voice left no room for refusal. "You have no choice, if you want your family to rest in peace." I clenched my fists, glaring at William. But I had no room to resist. I could only change into the dress. I have very fair skin, and the red dress made it look like snow. The dress was very short, just covering my hips, with my thighs exposed. The top was a V-neck, showing cleavage. My body, curvy and alluring, gave off an air of seduction. My looks leaned towards bright and pretty, but my strict and upright parents never approved of anything degrading. So during school, I dressed plainly and had never worn something like this. I knew William wanted to humiliate me. Like a puppet, I stayed by William's side. Crossing his hands on his knees, he said meaningfully, "You better put on a good show later." I didn't respond, seemingly indifferent. But facing the unknown, I was anxious. Soon, we arrived at the Moon Club. Moon Club was the most famous in Philadelphia. It had everything. To get in, you needed both money and power. And the women who came in were to serve men. I knew this because William liked to do business there. Once, when William was drunk after a business meeting, I went to find him and was almost assaulted until William rescued me. At that time, I laughably thought he saved me because he liked me. But thinking back now, it was just male possessiveness. "What are you thinking about?" Suddenly, William's voice snapped me out of it. "Just remembering some things," I said, my eyes dimmed. William smirked. "Let's go in." Suddenly, I felt an arm around my waist. It was William's. The heat from his touch felt like 1,000 needles pricking me. I had to bear it. We soon entered a private room, which had a metallic decor that looked very stylish. Several men were already inside with female companions. Some men had their hands on their companions' thighs. Their companions giggled shyly. The scene made me instinctively feel sick. I clenched my hand to hold back the nausea. The executives greeted William with smiling faces. "Mr. William." No one noticed me, but I noticed someone leering. It was a chubby man, and I froze for a moment. It was Leo from the construction company, the man who tried to assault me 5 years ago. I didn't expect him to be working with William now. I sat by William's side, listening to their conversation. William seemed busy, wanting to meet Leo's brother-in-law, but Leo refused. "My brother-in-law's very busy. He won't even see me." Leo's determined gaze fell on me. "I know, so I brought a gesture of goodwill." Before I realized it, William pushed me forward. "She's my gesture." As I was shoved forward, everyone's eyes were on me, some with greedy looks. Originally, they wouldn't dare touch William's woman. There were only 2 women who came and went around William. If you messed with his women, he'd teach you a harsh lesson. But being given away by William was a different story. Some men looked at Leo with envy. "Leo, you're one lucky guy. The woman hanging around Mr. William isn't like the ones from the club. She's even more stunning, and the important part is her presence. She seems feisty. Leo, you better train her well." The dirty talk reached my ears. I just watched William. William coldly smirked at me, and I could tell he was doing it on purpose. A chill rose from the soles of my feet. Then Leo asked, "Mr. William, you sure?" "Of course, Cynthia, take good care of Leo tonight," William replied to Leo. The second part was directed at me. I clenched my fists, my body trembling slightly. Did he think this was humiliating me? He was wrong. I had no pride left to be insulted. Thinking this, I smiled seductively under William's wanton gaze. I picked up a drink and walked over to Leo, swaying my hips. "Leo, this one's for you." I was immature back then. "I hope you'll be magnanimous and forgive me." I didn't look at William's expression, but Leo seemed a bit surprised. He then smiled satisfactorily and raised his glass. "Cheers." I drank it all in one gulp. After the drink, Leo pulled me onto his lap, wrapping an arm around my waist. The greasy smell made me want to vomit, but I held it in and smiled while serving him food. I bumped into the table, feeling it shake slightly. Glancing at William out of the corner of my eye, I noticed his pale face, gripping the table so tightly his fingers turned white. Without a doubt, the table had shaken because of him. I couldn't help but mock him internally. Was it his male pride? Did he think I'd be deeply humiliated serving Leo, and my enjoyment hurt his manly ego? Thinking this, I smiled even more brightly. I leaned into Leo's ear and whispered something. Leo instantly got excited, getting up and taking me with him. "Excuse me, we'll be leaving." As we left, he didn't forget to tell William, "Mr. William, I appreciate your sincerity. Rest assured, I'll meet my brother-in-law tomorrow." Just then, William's voice, as cold as ice, came through. "Stop. Cynthia, think it through. Are you really going with him?" I stopped and turned to him, my gaze clear. "I'm just doing as you asked." Leo squinted his eyes. "Mr. William, are you reluctant?" "If you are, I won't insist." I stoked the fire. "Leo, he's the one who needs you. What are you afraid of? I'm willing to go with you." After that, I pulled Leo out. Once outside, Leo's hands roved over me, eager to pin me against the wall. I closed my eyes. Was this my fate? I wanted to resign myself, but I hadn't yet avenged myself. I'd endure living without dignity if it meant survival. Just then, a calm and gentle male voice said, "Excuse me, please step aside." I jolted awake, my whole body trembling. Who dares interrupt me? Leo's arrogant words stopped abruptly when he saw who it was. He even showed a hint of flattery. "Eric, what a coincidence. Here to have some fun?" A man called Eric spoke in a gentle yet authoritative voice. "Leo, if I remember right, you got in trouble when you were drunk. And today, you repeat the mistake knowingly." No, this is a gift from Mr. William," Leo argued. "But I see that your companion seems unwilling." "I despise men who force women." Eric's voice remained soft but took on a sharp edge. I was stunned. He could tell I was unwilling? I instinctively looked up and saw a man in a suit, his face as handsome as jade. The light cut sharp angles on his face. His eyes seemed to carry a gentle smile, flowing with softness and focus. He resembled a piece of warm jade, exuding a gentle yet restrained aura. I recognized him. He was more mature compared to 7 years ago. But now, he was in a wheelchair. My heart pounded painfully. "Eric?" Leo looked at me. "She's willing, of course." Eric looked at me, his voice flowing like a gentle stream. "Do you want this?" I stared at him, bewildered. His gaze was unfamiliar. He didn't recognize me. I clenched my fists and pretended not to know him. "I don't." Leo's face darkened, ready to lash out. Eric stopped him, his voice calm. "Leo, do me a favor." Leo tugged his collar, then finally left. I looked at Eric, my voice hoarse. "Thank you." "No need," Eric replied indifferently. I watched as his assistant wheeled him away. Such a radiant person, now in a wheelchair. Yet, he hadn't changed at all. Whispers reached my ears, so envious, being able to talk to Eric. Eric respects women the most. He's the famous heir of a big family in Philadelphia. Even paralyzed, he fought his way through the heirs' battle, firmly controlling the company and making it one of the top enterprises in Philadelphia. I leaned weakly against the wall, my nose stinging as tears welled up in my eyes. I rushed into the bathroom. When I came out, I ran into William, who was looking for me. "Where did you go?" I composed myself. "Don't you already know?" I wasn't sure if Leo had left, nor did I care what William thought of me. A flash of anger ignited in William's eyes as he grabbed my arm and pulled me away. I could feel the overwhelming rage radiating from him. I was confused. Why was he so angry? William dragged me into a room in the club. He pushed me onto the bed, spreading my legs and straddling my waist. Because I was wearing a tight skirt, spreading my legs made it look like I wasn't wearing anything at all. Between us, only 2 thin layers of fabric separated our lower bodies. Above me, William's voice was hoarse. "Cynthia, why are you so cheap? Is any man good enough for you? His anger was intense. Did he think something happened between Leo and me? I looked into his clouded eyes and suddenly wrapped my arms around his neck. William, I teased, don't tell me you're jealous. When I wrapped my arms around his neck, I didn't miss the surprise that flashed in his eyes. But as soon as he heard what I said, the surprise quickly faded. Don't flatter yourself, he said coldly. From beginning to end, it was you who loved me like crazy. My clear eyes reflected his shadow, but I don't love you anymore. Wrath enveloped William, and his breathing grew heavy. He lowered his head and kissed me, his hot hand moving up my thigh. My eyes darkened, and I bit down hard on his tongue the moment it entered my mouth. The taste of blood filled our mouths. I stared at him coldly. I told you, any man would do, but not you. Cynthia. William's rage intensified, pressing me down again. I couldn't fight him, especially since he was so furious. He grabbed my hands and pinned them above my head, brutally thrusting into me. The pain of being torn apart was excruciating. The shadow above me oscillated with his movements. I glared at him with hatred. Do you hate me? William sneered, anger. What right do you have to hate me? With that, he ripped off his shirt, revealing his well-defined torso. Look at me. I turned my head away. But William forcibly turned my face back. See this scar on my chest? You did this. If my heart hadn't been on the right side, you would have killed me. This is all thanks to you. He spat out, thrusting even harder with every word. At first, William seemed only to release his anger, but gradually, he leaned down to kiss me, stripping away my dress, his hand caressing my back. Suddenly, he froze. What's this? I knew he had seen my scars. I let him turn me around, knowing he was counting each one. In prison, my ribs had been broken, a scar from surgery ran under my chest, my back was riddled with burns from electric rods. I lay on the bed, my face calm yet mocking. Do you think I had a good time in prison? Why didn't you tell me? I clenched my fists, my voice trembling. What was there to tell you, William? Everything that happened to me was your doing. If anyone has the right to hate, it's me. Your little injury is nothing compared to what I went through. William's eyes narrowed. He said nothing, pulling away from the bed. A tear escaped my eye, and after a long time, I picked up my clothes and sat at the edge of the bed, waiting. The sound of running water filled the room, and I stared blankly ahead. When William came out, he dressed without a word. Come with me, he ordered. I followed him silently, like a puppet. We left the club, got into the car, and drove in silence. To my surprise, he took me to a hospital. Speaking to the doctor with authority, William said, "Prepare some scar cream." My eyes flickered in shock. I didn't expect William to be taking me to get scar treatment in an instant. I returned to my blank state. After getting the cream, we returned to the villa. The house was brightly lit. I walked back to my room, opened the door, and found someone suddenly jumping onto my bed, uninvited. Sorry, they said smugly, this bed's mine now. I didn't respond. Another voice sneered, living with a whore like you, this whole room stinks. But their smug expressions froze, turning to terror. William's cold voice cut through the air. Do you always treat her this way? William had followed me. It was obvious he was angry. The two servants panicked, trying to reason. Sir. William cut them off sharply. From today, you're both fired. Gossiping won't be tolerated. The two women turned pale with fear and immediately tried to defend themselves. Sir, we only treated her that way because Madam ordered us to. Madam hates her because she seduced you. Last time, Madam even threw a necklace into the pool and made her dive for it, keeping her in the water all afternoon. I also heard Madam threatened her by digging up Lucy's grave. Sir, you can't fire us. We belong to Madam. I didn't expect them to spill everything about Diana just to plead for mercy. Black energy raged around William, his gaze sharp as a sword. He spat out one word, leave. They scurried away in a panic. I didn't even lift my head, just stood there, stunned. William looked at me, a glint of determination in his cobalt blue eyes. I'll give you an explanation. I sat on the bed, placing the medicine aside. Would you really hurt the woman you love? William didn't respond, his thin lips pressed into a line. I had no hope in his attitude, his reaction didn't surprise me. William didn't dwell on it either. Let me apply the medicine for you. I handed the medicine to him. The next day, the entire mansion was abuzz with the news that William had stayed with me alone all night. The servants all looked at me strangely. I didn't care. It wasn't the first time I'd faced rumors since I started following William. I didn't expect to meet Diana at the staircase. The mansion's stairs divided left and right but were connected at the first landing. Diana and I came down from opposite sides, just like 3 years ago, and bumped into each other. Diana blocked my way, her voice lacking its usual gentleness, now cold. You slept with William. I retorted coldly, seems like you didn't satisfy your husband, using all your energy elsewhere, huh? A flash of guilt crossed Diana's eyes. What are you saying? I saw right through her. You're wondering if I know something, right? Diana, you're gutsy. William loves you, but he won't tolerate being deceived. As soon as I said that, Diana dropped her pretense of gentleness, grabbed my collar, and got in my face. What do you know? I caught her hands, meeting her glare without fear. While I was in prison, an old friend of mine visited and helped me look into some things like how you never divorced your husband abroad, and now he's back with your son. You still meet up with him frequently. Diana's face went pale. She was stunned. I pried her hands off me, demonstrating a child's height in the air. Your son should be 8 this year, right? About this tall? Or this tall? If my Lucy had grown up, she'd be this tall too, in 2nd grade by now. Lucy was bright, always scoring 100s. I smirked. Tell me, with William's temper, if he knew you lied to him, what would he do to your husband and son? I'm really curious. Diana was shocked that I knew so much. Her face turned white, but she recovered quickly. Even if you tell William, he won't believe you. I noticed her eyes and steps moving toward the edge of the stairs. I understood her intention and moved with her, positioning myself directly above her. Diana grabbed my wrist, eyes malicious. Last time, I killed your child here. If you push me down for revenge, William would be furious, right? I'd make him punish you, push you down the stairs, then I'd bribe the doctors to ensure you die in surgery. My secret would stay intact. As she finished, she stumbled forward, trying to make it look accidental. I played along, pushing her forcefully. Diana, I'll grant your wish. Her smug expression turned to shock as she fell, clearly not expecting me to actually push her. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to savor her terrified look as she tumbled down. Watching Diana lie in a pool of blood, I felt a strange relief, my eyes slightly reddening. That's when William returned. Our eyes met. He didn't say anything, just picked up Diana and headed to the hospital. As for me, I was dragged forcefully to the hospital by the servants. We arrived a bit late. Diana had already been treated. Diana's neck was braced, her face paper white as she leaned against William. William, I interrupted her. Just a fall down the stairs, yet so weak. You'd think she was dying. William spoke coldly. Stop talking. A sharp pain struck my heart, like a needle. When I lost our child from a fall down the stairs, I didn't act like this. Her fall was nothing compared to mine. William seemed to ponder, his eyes studying Diana intently. Diana, sensing his doubt, grew uneasy. Because of the wedding incident, my body's always been weaker than normal. I met Diana's vengeful gaze. She hated me, naturally. If she had fallen on her own, she could have controlled the impact and wouldn't have been this badly hurt. A servant beside me spoke up. Sir, the madam's already weak from surgery and blood loss. This fall nearly killed her. Plus, we all saw her push the madam down with our own eyes, she said, pointing at me. I wasn't surprised at all. Others chimed in too. We all saw it with our own eyes. Diana gently persuaded, William, don't be mad. The stairs aren't that high. It was my own fault, not Cynthia's. I owe her this much. Saying that, tears began to fall. Couldn't help but clap for Diana. Her acting was even better than before. William listened, his clear eyes fixed on me. Did you push her? I met his gaze without backing down. If I said she fell by herself, would you believe me? Do you believe what you're saying? William's words cut off midway. Seemingly remembering something, he turned and looked coldly at the two servants. Did you see Cynthia push Diana with your own eyes? Under William's piercing gaze, the two servants trembled and told the truth. We didn't see it. When we came out, Madam was already on the ground. Diana had a bad feeling. She urged again, William, I don't blame Cynthia. Let's not pursue this any further. Let's just let it go. You might want to let it go, but I don't. There's security footage. Checking it will make everything clear. I said this while looking at Diana. I was sure Diana felt guilty and wouldn't dare to look at the footage. If it were reviewed, William would know what we talked about. She would lose William's trust just the same. My words were meant to hint this to William. Last night, the two servants had told William those things. Their testimony was now unreliable. He would remember how Diana slandered me. I admitted to myself that I was gambling, but I won the bet. William let go of Diana and stood up, looking at her. You really let me down. Diana's eyes reddened. William, listen to me. But William had already walked away. I smirked and silently mouthed to Diana, I won. Diana snapped, glaring fiercely at me. Cynthia, you bitch, I should have let you die in that prison. I remembered the days in prison, living a life worse than death, constantly on edge. I thought it was William's doing. From her words, it seemed like it was Diana. This grudge, I would surely settle. I just left her with, take care and get well soon. Then I turned and walked out of the ward. With William gone, I pondered on how I should get back. I had no money, even taking a cab was impossible, but I didn't expect to run into Eric at the hospital. I casually glanced out the window and saw Eric. He seemed to be doing physical therapy, walking back and forth with the help of bars, sweat beading on his smooth forehead. He looked like he was in pain, but he didn't give up. Suddenly, he stumbled forward. By the time I realized, I had already dashed into the therapy room and caught him. Are you okay? Eric looked up at me. Thanks. I helped him into his wheelchair and skillfully massaged him. For physical therapy, you shouldn't walk for more than half an hour each time. Overdoing it can damage your muscles and won't be beneficial. If you walk too much, you need a massage. Eric asked me, do you know a lot about this? My eyes dimmed a bit, and I replied, yes, I got a nursing certificate. William had once been in a car accident. I had taken care of him. To take care of him better, I studied and got certified as a caregiver. I was pretty good at caring for patients. Just then, a man came running in. Eric, I'm here to pick you up. Who's this? Then he saw me. I stood up. I'm just a passerby. I saw Eric was about to fall, so I helped him. Before leaving, Eric handed me a business card. I need a caregiver. If you're looking for a job, you can call this number. As I watched him leave, clutching the black card in my hand, I felt a bit melancholic. So, he thinks I'm a caregiver. Lost in thought, Eric's silhouette vanished, replaced by William. William's face was as cold as ever. What are you doing here? Let's go home. I followed him back. In the days at the villa, William seemed busier than usual. I occasionally overheard Diana calling William. Diana admitted her wrongs, saying she was afraid I would take him away. She did what she did out of love, fearing to lose him. William seemed to buy into this, often rushing to the hospital to see her. He had work during the day, and at night, whenever William wasn't at the hospital, Diana would call, complaining from head to toe. While I continued doing chores at the villa as usual, the housemaids would scramble for the work. Leave it to me. Don't trouble yourself with this. Sir told us that we're paid to do this dirty work so you don't have to. My status had shot up. I seldom saw William, nor did I need to do chores, freeing up a lot of my time. So, I started thinking about finding a job. But if I just found any job, William would destroy it just like before. Hence, I needed to find a job where William wouldn't easily find me or dare to offend. Eric was the perfect choice. I took out that black business card from my pocket, the one that belonged to Eric's assistant. I clenched the card tightly and, after what felt like forever, borrowed someone's phone to call the assistant. After the call, I returned the phone, borrowed some money, and took a taxi to Eric's villa. The assistant I'd seen with Eric last time met me at the door. When I arrived, I saw several other caregivers waiting inside the villa. I was taken to the selection area, where the assistant announced to the others, "Sorry, we've decided to hire this lady. You may all leave now." I was then taken to see Eric. At that moment, he was feeding fish by the pond. The fish food dropped down, and a group of koi fish swarmed it. I watched the koi fish, with their mix of red and white colors and golden hues, all looking quite beautiful. The pond water was also very clear, with a few green lotus leaves floating on top, creating a serene atmosphere. The assistant spoke up, "Eric, Cynthia is here." My hands were intertwined, and my heart felt like a parched land, cracked and beyond repair. Eric put down the fish food and turned his head slightly to look at me, his expression gentle. "Do you have any salary requirements?" he asked. I shook my head. I trust that with Eric's capabilities, there won't be any delays in payment. As long as I have a place to stay, that's good enough. Eric didn't respond immediately, seemingly assessing me. His deep black eyes were hard to read. After a while, Eric finally spoke. "Take her to her room." I bowed to Eric and then followed the assistant into the house. We walked for about 5 minutes before reaching the house. He showed me to a room that was large, with a 2-meter bed and exquisite decorations. Compared to the master bedroom, it didn't fall short at all. "I'm staying here?" I asked. The assistant nodded and adjusted his silver-framed glasses, pointing to a closed door nearby. "That's Eric's room. As a caregiver, you must always be mindful of Eric's safety, so you're staying in the room next to his to better monitor his condition." I understood. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of him." The assistant smiled and nodded. "You can take a shower and change clothes, then go find Eric." I entered the room and closed the door, noticing a light blue long dress on the bed. It was made of pure cotton, very light and covered with a layer of sheer fabric. I took the dress and stepped into the shower. After washing up and changing, I glanced at myself in the mirror. Honestly, I didn't care about my appearance anymore. After spending 3 years in prison, living a life that was neither human nor ghost, all I thought about was revenge. I didn't need to attract anyone. But no doubt, this style suited me. It felt like being transported back to my student Daisy. Couldn't remember the last time I wore something like this. My parents would have liked it. Gathering my thoughts, I went downstairs. Eric was in the living room, with a doctor needling him. His pants were rolled up to his knees, with numerous needles in his calves. His expression was calm, but I noticed his hand clenched on his knee, veins bulging. I walked over. "Eric, thanks for hiring me." Eric shifted his gaze to me, his eyes lingering for a moment. A gentle smile curved his lips. "No need to thank me." I asked, "Eric, can I ask something? Earlier, I saw you were still interviewing other caregivers. Why did you decide to hire me?" Eric chuckled. "I waited a few days and didn't hear from you. I thought you weren't coming and started looking for others. But you came." He didn't finish his sentence, but I guessed he meant that since I came, he didn't need anyone else. Soon the needles were removed. I stopped talking to Eric. As the needles were taken out, Eric looked at me. "Were you talking to me to distract me?" I paused and nodded. "Acupuncture must hurt a lot." "I actually learned some acupuncture too." Eric interrupted. "Did you learn it for your boyfriend?" "Eric?" I looked at him, surprised. The smile vanished from his lips. "I should head to the study." "Push me there, please." I stepped forward and carefully helped him into his wheelchair. To assist him, I had to slide my hands under his arms, making it look like I was hugging him. I could eat meals with Eric and had familiarized myself with his routines. Eric was gentle, unlike William, who was moody. Most of his time was spent in the study or at the company. When he went to the company, I went with him. When he had meetings, he would let me walk around and explore. His face often had a smile. But every time I saw him in pain from his rehabilitation, I couldn't believe it. He should have been a golden boy, yet he ended up like this. How could he still smile? If it were me, I wouldn't be able to stay as calm and composed. I'd only think of destroying everything. But our relationship was strictly employer and caregiver. Even if I was curious, I wouldn't ask. I had been with Eric for a week, and William hadn't come looking for me. I guessed he was still entirely focused on Diana and hadn't noticed I was gone. I went from being constantly on edge to feeling relaxed. This day, I followed Eric to the company again. Eric was going to a meeting. He said to me, "Go walk around for an hour, then come back." I patted my pocket, feeling a bit embarrassed. "I'll just wait outside." Waiting was what I did best. But suddenly, a black card was thrust in front of me. I looked up to see Eric holding a black card with his long fingers, saying, "This is your advanced bonus. Go buy something." I held the card in my hands, encouraged by his look. "I'll push you to the meeting room first." Soon, we arrived at the meeting room. Pushing Eric into the meeting room, I took the card and headed to the mall across the street, planning to buy something, but no sooner had I left the building than I was blocked by a group of black-suited bodyguards. My heart tightened. I tried to sidestep, but then the bodyguards stepped aside. A familiar figure appeared. It was William. William, wearing a black shirt, looked even grimmer. His thin lips slightly parted, and his voice was as cold as a glacier. "Cynthia, you've got guts to run away. Come with me." I let out a mocking laugh. "Why should I go with you?" William's face darkened, and it felt like the temperature around us dropped. "If you really cared about me, with your skills, you wouldn't have just noticed I'd been missing for so long." William's expression was stern, smooth talker. He stepped forward to grab my hand, trying to drag me away. I tried to break free but couldn't. "Help. Kidnapping." A crowd gathered, whispering among themselves, yet no one dared to intervene because of William's bodyguards. As I was about to be taken away, a cold male voice pierced through the crowd. "Where do you think you're taking my woman?" It was Eric. I looked over where the voice came from, and the onlookers made way for his assistant pushing his wheelchair. I felt a surge of hope. William saw Eric and sneered, "A cripple dares to compete with me?" Anger surged within me, and I lashed out at William. "You're the cripple. If he's a cripple, then you're blind." William's face turned ugly, and he almost crushed my wrist. Just then, another hand, rough but gentle, held my wrist. It was Eric. He stood up. Just as I was about to worry, Eric stared at William defiantly. "Mr. William, release my fiancé." His words stunned not only William but also me. How did I become Eric's fiancé? William's face darkened like a stormy sky. "Your fiancé? Everyone in Philly knows Cynthia is my woman." Unlike William's outburst, Eric remained calm, his voice steady yet powerful. "Isn't your wife Diana?" William's lips tightened. "And since when did Cynthia become your fiancé?" "From what I know, she's just a nurse you brought back." I knew Eric was trying to protect me, but the fact was, I wasn't his fiancé. Besides, with employees from the company around, would he really abandon his reputation for me? Eric, however, stated calmly, "Professor John was my mentor. He personally told me he'd marry his daughter to me." Had my father really said that? It didn't seem likely. Back then, I was still in high school, and my father, a teacher, was firmly against young love. I knew Eric was lying. His eyes fixed on William's hand gripping mine, his tone growing more assertive. "Please release Cynthia, Mr. William." For a moment, I stood stunned, looking at him. I thought I saw concern in his deep eyes, but it quickly vanished, and I doubted what I'd seen. Slowly, the grip on my hand loosened, and I hurriedly hid behind Eric. My action stabbed at William's heart. "Cynthia, I'm giving you one last chance. Come with me." I looked at William, his eyes were full of threats. I thought of Lucy's tombstone. What would I do if he used that to threaten me? I hesitated. But then Eric grabbed my hand again, his warmth steadying me, and I stared at him in a daze. "Mr. William, Professor John was my mentor. Now that he's gone, I'll protect his daughter and clear his name." My heart trembled, and in an instant, my nose tingled, and my eyes turned red. Sparks flew as William and Eric locked eyes. I tugged at Eric. "I need to say something to him." Eric stepped back. I faced William. William, I'm not your toy. I have the right to refuse to go back with you. You said you'd give me an explanation, but your explanation was just Diana apologizing and you forgiving her. Let me tell you, I was the one who pushed Diana. Before, when I loved you, you didn't believe me. Now you're married to her, and you don't believe her, so calling you blind isn't wrong. William stared at me intensely, his eyes darkening, revealing no emotion. Whatever he felt, he was no longer any concern of mine. I pushed Eric's wheelchair and left. Back in the office, Eric instructed his assistant, delay the meeting by half an hour. The assistant thoughtfully closed the door behind him. The large office was now just Eric and me. Before, my focus was solely on taking care of Eric, without any romantic feelings. But now, I felt a bit uneasy. Eric gazed at me, and I lowered my head to avoid his eyes. Memories of the past flooded back. Back in my senior year, Eric was my dad's favorite student. I was weak in science, so my dad asked Eric to tutor me. At that time, I hadn't met William yet and had a small crush on Eric. I was sure he liked me a bit too. But then he disappeared, and I got involved with William. Suddenly, Eric spoke. The engagement, it's not entirely a lie. Sunlight streamed through the large office windows, enveloping everything in a silent glow. I stared at him, surprised by his words. Unsure how to respond, I changed the subject. Your leg? It's improving well, thanks to your great care. My gaze flickered. Eric wheeled himself closer, looking straight at me. Don't change the subject. I met his eyes, unable to avoid them. Since we met again, you've acted like you don't know me. I thought you'd forgotten me. Yet here you are, mentioning an engagement. Eric's lips pressed together, his expression tinged with sorrow. How could I forget you? I've always remembered you. I clenched my fists, feeling utterly ashamed. Rumors were flying outside that I was madly in love with William, upset about him marrying someone else, and that I gatecrashed their wedding with a knife, intent on murder. Covering my stomach, I sobbed uncontrollably. But deep down, I knew, I was avenging Lucy and my parents. Using a child's bone marrow to save a first love, William could never let that secret get out, so in the end, all the blame fell on me. As I was wallowing in my misery, suddenly, Eric grabbed my hand. I looked up and met his apologetic gaze. No, it's my fault, he said. I didn't protect you all. Back then, I got into a car accident and was sent abroad. By the time I woke up, your parents were dead, and you were in jail. If I'd been there, I wouldn't have let you or the teachers end up like this. He spoke with such sincerity that his eyes even reddened. I couldn't help but remember those days. I bit my lip, holding back tears. Eric gently wiped my tears away, but I still couldn't hold back, and they fell like broken strings of pearls. His kindness overwhelmed me. He's still the same as before, while I'm beyond broken. Even a little bit of gentleness feels like rain nourishing my parched heart. After what felt like a long time crying, I finally calmed down and curled up on the couch, hugging myself. Eric looked at his Patek Philippe watch. It's time, push me to the meeting. I stood up, took a deep breath, and pushed him to the meeting room. As usual, after getting him to the room, I'd leave. After all, it was company business, and I was an outsider. Just as I turned to go, he grabbed my hand. Stay and listen. I was stunned, noticing the curious gazes of the executives. Not wanting to disturb the meeting, I stayed and listened. Their meeting was about the exhibition hall's design. The design and marketing departments were arguing over the details but couldn't agree on anything. After everyone left, Eric looked at me. Do you have any ideas? Me? You studied design in college. Eric's expression showed he wasn't joking. I squeezed the wheelchair handles tighter. I studied design, but I've never done any real work, let alone something as significant as an entire exhibition hall. Maybe my lack of confidence showed in Eric's eyes. He stopped the wheelchair and asked me very seriously, have you thought about the future? Future? The word felt foreign, throwing me into confusion and silence. How could someone who has been in prison think about the future? Didn't I want to work like those successful people? But I had no future. Eric continued, have you thought about life after your revenge? I hesitated, shaking my head. Do I even have a future? Of course you do. Eric's gentle words brought me back. You can start thinking about the future now. I had always felt like fighting William was like trying to break a stone with an egg. I was prepared to die a horrible death. But seeing Eric now, I buried my negativity deep inside. Then Eric suggested, by the way, take me to visit your parents' graves. I haven't paid my respects to my parents in 3 years either, so this is a good chance. Leaving the company, Eric and I went to the cemetery. It wasn't a well-kept one, even the guard was neglectful. My parents' tombstones were covered in dust, and their photos had become blurry. I bit my lip. I was in such bad shape back then, this was the best I could do for them. I didn't look at Eric's reaction, just wiped the photos with my sleeve, lit incense, and knelt in front of my mom's tombstone. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry I haven't come to visit you in 3 years. Today, I also brought Eric to pay his respects. Eric stepped forward to pay his respects. His soft voice had a hint of heaviness. Rest assured, I will take care of Cynthia in your place. You always said my dad asked you to look after me. Why? In front of my dad, I finally asked. Eric took out his phone and handed it to me. This is a message your dad sent during my coma. It was from my dad. The tone, the words, I could see my dad's shadow in every line. More than a message, it felt like a will. Eric, by the time you read this. I didn't tell Cynthia about your accident, as you wished. I never regretted anything in my life, but now I regret hurting her when she knelt at my door with her daughter. She was in trouble, and I pushed her away. I now entrust my only daughter to you. Please take care of her. Reading this, I burst into tears. Only after becoming a parent did I understand my parents' intentions. Emotion, guilt, and regret washed over me, and I broke down. Dad, I cried. As I nearly fainted, Eric caught me. I lay on his knee, crying for a long time. The wind blew against my cheeks, bringing a sense of calm and drying my tears. I moved to the next grave, Lucy's. A black and white photo, her 5-year-old face hurting my heart. Eric, this is my daughter, and her brother. Her name was Lucy. I turned to Eric, smiling bitterly. But the sadness soon overwhelmed me. My unborn baby never got to see the world. Diana pushed me down the stairs, and I lost him. Her reason for hurting me was that she just couldn't wait that long. My eyes reddened, it felt ridiculous. Eric pressed his lips together, saying nothing. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I started to spill everything. William had Lucy die on the operating table when she was just 5 years old to save Diana. For Diana, he also caused the deaths of my parents and my 2-month-old baby. Hatred filled my eyes, so I'm out for revenge. My emotions were raw and open. To my surprise, Eric agreed, sure, tell me your plan, and I'll help you. I looked at him in shock. He seemed to understand my thoughts and glanced at the tombstone, his eyes cold, not just for you, but also to clear your parents' names. It was the first time I'd seen such an expression on Eric's face. I suddenly remembered the talk I heard about him at the Ming-Yu Club. People said he had taken full control of the company with iron-fisted measures. I had been by William's side when he lost power, and I knew how brutal and tough group struggles were. William and I had put in countless efforts. Every step was hard-fought. For Eric to hold the reins of the whole group, his means couldn't have been simple. His gentle exterior was just a facade. But I still chose to refuse. I couldn't drag him down with me. Eric didn't push the issue. After leaving the cemetery, I seriously thought about my future life. So when Eric mentioned the advance bonus, I knew what I wanted to buy. I bought art supplies and paints. I needed to start cultivating myself from an artistic perspective. If I could return to a normal life, I hoped to become a designer, fulfilling the dream I had when I chose this profession. I painted by the window while Eric worked nearby. My art supplies were in Eric's study, his suggestion, saying the view was the best here. He was right. The entire residence was like a classical garden with scenic rockeries, green waters, and pavilions. Painting turned out quite well. Eric's voice came through. I looked towards him unknowingly. He had already wheeled himself to my side, his gaze on my canvas. Seeing my half-formed painting, I felt a bit embarrassed. It's been a long time since I last painted. Take your time. Eric's soft features and gentle words were strangely comforting. I felt a surge of confidence. But then, my phone rang. It was my old phone, and it was William calling. What did William want? After hesitating, I answered, but it was Diana's voice on the other end. Cynthia, I'm sorry for what I did before. Can you come back? Diana's voice was gentle, but unlike Eric, her gentleness hit a knife. I didn't know her purpose for calling me back, but I knew her words were insincere. I coldly replied, what's in it for you if I return? Diana's tone changed. I don't care what kind of spell you have over William making him think of you. You need to come back so he stops thinking about you. Otherwise, do you want your daughter's soul to be disturbed forever? Threatening me? Did you forget what I have against you? My eyes darkened, and I hung up without another word. I then met Eric's clear, deep black eyes. They reflected my vengeful self. I bit my lip. This is who I am now. Scared yet? I had tried to convince Eric to break off the engagement, but he wouldn't agree. I saw my dad's message to him, only asking him to take care of me, not mentioning any marriage. He already did well, giving me a place to stay, helping me rediscover my passion, and protecting me from William. He did a lot. But then Eric just shook his head, smiling confidently. No way, loving someone means accepting everything about them. My heart trembled, almost doubting my ears. What did you say? Eric, unaware of the storm he caused in my heart, gazed deeply. No matter what you become, I still like you. Stumbling over my words, I asked, are you confessing to me? He admitted, calm, I didn't say it before, worried I'd scare you. I was a mess inside. Do you know what leverage I have against Diana? It's her son, only 8 years old. I wanted her son to suffer like Lucy. I'm bad. Eric's gentle smile never wavered, showing no disgust. My heart tangled more. I have 2 other kids, I've been someone's mistress, and I've done time. I revealed all my flaws. No normal person would want a woman like me. Eric frowned deeply, looking displeased. Seeing his expression, a part of me felt strangely disappointed. He should despise me, the thought would be better off. But then Eric spoke coldly, don't degrade yourself like this, Cynthia. You're great. After hardship comes sweetness. You'll live well in the future. I was stunned. I never expected Eric's first angry look at me to be for this reason. Silence spread through the room. I clutched my phone until Eric broke it again. Or, do you dislike that I'm in a wheelchair? I looked at him, he appeared vulnerable. Don't say that. Your legs are almost healed. I stammered, flustered, feeling uneasy. I need some air, I'll head out first. I hid back in my room like a turtle retreating into its shell. How could Eric still like me? I thought I was done feeling things, but thinking of these past days with Eric, his respect for me, I felt a new way of being with a man. Care and respect, and being needed. Eric's expression earlier had me in a fluster. I pondered for a long time until someone knocked on the door. I snapped out of it, opening the door to find Eric. Remembering his confession, I backed off, clutching the door. What do you need? Can I come in? I stepped aside. Eric wheeled himself into the room, and I followed him in. He lifted a box from his lap. This is for you. I hadn't noticed he was carrying something. Judging by the packaging, it was a phone. I saw your phone screen was cracked. Even though I knew the price of a phone was trivial for someone like Eric, who oversees a billion-dollar conglomerate, I couldn't accept it. I can't pay you back. I refused outright. I don't want it. Eric's gentle eyes seemed to see right through me. Don't worry about paying it back. If it makes you feel better, agree to accompany me to a party with that. I finally took it, okay. I knew it was just a trade-off to make me accept it. Even if I hadn't agreed, he would have found another reason. Seeing me accept, Eric turned and left. Using the new phone made me feel different. I finally realized I was out of prison and starting a new life. I set the phone aside and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up at 7, as usual. As soon as I got up, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered it, and the person on the other side stammered, "Is this Cynthia?" I frowned. "Yes, who are you?" "Sorry, I'm the cemetery manager. This morning we discovered that the graves of your 3 loved ones were dug up. It's our fault for poor security." I couldn't hear anything else they said. My mind went blank, like I was struck by lightning. What happened? Mom, Dad, Lucy, the baby. I threw off the covers, stumbled out of bed, and ran frantically. I nearly fell in the living room but ran into the butler. The butler helped steady me and, seeing my panic, asked, "What's wrong?" I gathered myself. "Butler, I need to go to the cemetery. Can you stay with Eric for his rehab today?" Usually, my job every morning was to help Eric with his rehab. But given the situation, I couldn't wait. I had to go to the cemetery. Though confused, the butler agreed. "All right, if it's important, go ahead. I'll explain to Eric and get you a car." With no more worries, I hurried out. The butler suddenly called after me, "Cynthia, change your clothes." I realized I was still in my pajamas. I rushed back, changed quickly, and headed to the cemetery. At the cemetery, I went straight to the site and saw the empty plots. 3 tombstones, all empty. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I stood there, dumbfounded. Then a wave of rage surged from within me. Was I unable to protect even my family's remains? Collapsing to the ground, I broke down in tears. "Cynthia, I'm sorry. It's our fault. We can offer compensation if..." I cut him off, standing up, eyes blazing. "Compensation? No amount of money can compensate for this. I just want my parents and my child's ashes back. They're everything to me." I grabbed the staff member by his collar. He turned pale with fear. My hair was loose, flying in the wind, and with my hysterical state, I must have looked like a terrifying ghost. At that moment, Eric arrived. "Cynthia, calm down." His trademark gentle voice penetrated my anger like a breath of spring air, calming me instantly. I didn't question why he was there, but I instinctively trusted him. "Eric, my parents' ashes and Lucy's ashes, they're gone." Eric comforted me softly, "We'll find them." Then he turned to the staff. "Are there any security cameras?" Finally, someone rational. The cemetery staff nodded hastily. "Yes, we have 24-hour surveillance." I nearly lit up with hope. Throughout, Eric held my hand, his warmth reassuring me. In the security room, I rushed to the monitors. The staff pulled up last night's footage. I watched closely without blinking. At first, the cemetery was quiet. A few minutes into the fast-forwarded footage, at around midnight, 4 men sneaked in, targeting my parents' ashes. I felt a chill all over. "Those are the ones." Eric took the footage and handed it to his assistant. "Find these 4 men." The staff mentioned, "Cynthia, even petty thieves usually steal valuable items or arrange ghost marriages. These men seem to be targeting you specifically." I froze, recalling Diana's words to me. How ruthless. She actually did it. I wouldn't go easy on her either. Red-eyed, I seethed. "It's Diana. She'll pay for this." I was half mad with fury. Eric seemed concerned. "Cynthia, my team will find them soon. When they do, we'll call the police and get the ashes back." All I could do was hope. I looked at him, clutching his hand, pleading, "Eric, I need your help." Eric squeezed my hand. "I'll help you." Eric's team was fast. Within 2 hours, he got a call. "Eric, we found them. Call the police." As the complainant, I was taken to the police station to give a statement. Eric accompanied me. While giving my statement, I accused Diana as the mastermind. The police investigated the thieves and found an unexplained sum of money in their accounts. They believed me and called Diana in for questioning. But with William protecting her, she was safe. Learning that Diana was free, I stood with Eric in the station's parking lot. Eric looked at me, disappointed. I gave a bitter smile. I expected this result. "Eric, is everything I asked for ready?" Eric nodded but still hesitated. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" My eyes flashed cold. "I'm sure." I locked eyes with Eric's clear and deep gaze, feeling like I might just get lost in them. We were just staring at each other, and it felt like the world went silent around us. Then a harsh male voice cut through. "Cynthia, get away from him, now." It was William. I broke eye contact and turned to see William and Diana standing side by side. William's eyes were glued to me. Diana's gaze was challenging, but when she spoke, her voice was soft and she smiled. "Cynthia, I haven't congratulated you yet. I heard you're engaged to Eric. Finding such a good match, Lucy can finally be at peace." My face turned pale, and my heart clenched in pain. I held my chest and said, "You have no right to mention Lucy." In my disheveled state, I caught the gleam of triumph in Diana's eyes. "Feeling triumphant, huh? We'll see how long that lasts." I lowered my gaze and looked at William. "William, I knew it. Last time you took me away, it wasn't out of love. I thought." I stopped mid-sentence, then looked at Eric with a disappointed expression. "Eric, let's go." I moved to push his wheelchair. William's expression turned cold for a moment. "What did you think?" I clenched my fists, my voice soft and calm like a lake, but loud enough for William to hear. "I thought you might still have some feelings for me." Started to walk away when William's urgent voice called out, "Wait." I paused, then suddenly fainted. Eric tried to reach for me, but he was in a wheelchair. William dashed forward, ignoring Diana's reaction, and caught me. I instinctively leaned into William's arms. As expected, he picked me up, looking down at Eric. "You can't even take care of yourself. How could you possibly take care of Cynthia?" William took me to a private hospital for a full checkup. He stayed with me the entire time. Soon, the doctor gave a diagnosis in my hospital room. "Mr. William, the patient has severe heart failure and needs surgery." In the room, William looked like he'd been struck by lightning. How could this happen? Diana, standing beside us, felt a surge of triumph. Severe heart failure meant Cynthia would die soon unless she got a heart transplant, and where would they find a heart donor so easily? She was lucky enough to find bone marrow back then. I woke up slowly, meeting William's desperate eyes. I rose and tried to leave, but William pressed me back on the bed, frowning. "Where are you going?" I saw concern in his eyes. Weakly, I said, "I want to leave. I don't want to stay with you." But William held me down. "Where would you go? Eric can't take care of you properly." There was something off in his tone. "What's wrong with me?" William hesitated. Diana couldn't wait to say, "The doctor said you have severe heart failure." "Diana," William's voice was icy, a clear warning. But it was too late. My breath hitched and I clutched my heart. No wonder I always felt this pain in my chest. So that's what it was. William's voice was low, trying to encourage me. "There's still a chance. The doctor said we can fix this with a heart transplant. I will do everything to save you." Tears rolled down my cheeks as I gave William a sharp look. "It's not that easy, and just thinking about having someone else's heart in my body makes me sick." I was done. I had nothing and nobody left in this world to care about. I lay there, feeling completely hopeless. Diana's face stiffened, but forced a normal look because William was present. "Don't be like that. Once it's in your body, it's yours." I looked at William. "I don't want to see her." William turned to Diana. "Diana, go get some rest." Diana turned pale but eventually left. The first few days I was in the hospital, Diana didn't come to visit. William came to see me every day, showing me a gentleness I'd never seen before. I looked at him with an unclear expression. William turned to see my look. "What's wrong?" I smiled subtly. "Just surprised you've never been this gentle with me. This kind of gentleness has always been for Diana." "I'm sorry." William hugged me, his voice soft. "I didn't realize my feelings for you. The time you were away, I missed you so much." After a moment of hesitation, he finally said, "I've fallen in love with you." I couldn't help but smile. "It's been 8 years, and I finally hear you say that." William released me, his voice filled with care. "Just focus on getting better now. Leave everything else to me." As for my engagement to Eric, he didn't seem to care at all. My smile deepened. Then, suddenly, my condition worsened. When they announced it, Diana was there too. I reasonably suspected she was there to gloat, despite her face showing worry. I knew she was hoping I'd die soon. I lay on the bed, barely hanging on. William had lost his usual composure, gripping the doctor's collar. If you can't save her, then none of you are worth anything. The doctor trembled in fear, saying nothing. Another doctor rushed in, excited. We found it, Mr. William. He handed William the papers, wiping sweat from his forehead. We found a heart donor in the black market. The donor is named Henry, and he's 8 years old, but just as the doctor finished speaking, Diana snatched the information away. Her sharp voice rang out, "No way." William coldly stared at the suddenly vocal Diana. Why? Diana looked at William in panic. This is my son's file. Why would his information be in such a place? William pursed his lips, seemingly wavering. I looked at William and spoke softly. I'm okay. I can't accept having someone else's heart beating inside my body. Spending the last days with you is fulfilling enough for me. I gazed at William with tenderness. It mirrored Diana's initial hesitation perfectly. The tenderness in William's heart was about to overflow. No, you must have the surgery. He then asked the doctor coldly, are there any other donors? The doctor seemed to realize the situation. This doctor had been working here for 3 years. Though he wasn't in the hematology department, he knew the story between William, Diana, and me. Now the situation had completely reversed. He lowered his head, wiped the sweat off his forehead again, and cautiously answered, "No." I studied William's expression. At the moment the doctor said no, a dark look flashed across his face. I've been with William for 5 years, I know him well. Just one look and I know what he's thinking. That look means he's made up his mind. I understand William, and so does Diana. Diana suddenly tore the file into pieces, her gentle exterior unable to hold. I get it. Cynthia, this has all been your scheme. You don't even have a heart condition. You're just getting back at me. You want my son to atone for your daughter's death. I angrily looked at her, my face flushed, would never do such a thing. Suddenly, my heart ached. I clutched my chest, my face pale as paper. William supported me, letting me lean on his shoulder. You can't get upset. Don't argue with her. Diana pointed at me. William, she's faking it. She's definitely faking it. I didn't speak. William defended me. Take her away. Diana tried to cause a scene but was escorted out by the doctor. The room fell silent. Leaning on William's shoulder, I whispered, don't you think Diana would believe I'm pretending? William didn't respond. I weakly continued, if it were me, I'd think it was fake too. How could it just match with Diana's son? Plus, with all the animosity between her and me. I gave a bitter smile. William spoke in a calm voice. It's not surprising her son matches with you. After all, our daughter matched with her. It's fate. I'll have her son donate his heart as a form of repayment to you. Mentioning our daughter made my nose tingle with sadness. In the next few days, William was busy trying to find someone. I stayed in the hospital quite comfortably. One day, I was talking to Eric on the phone. Suddenly, Diana burst in, her eyes bloodshot, looking like she wanted to devour me. Cynthia, do you have a heart condition or not? I leaned back on the bed, leisurely watching her expressions internally. I sighed. Her expression is exactly like mine back then. Diana saw I wasn't talking, her face darkened further. She grabbed me. Come with me for an exam. I'll expose you. I grabbed her hand back, squeezing it so tight she couldn't resist. Not at all like someone sick. Don't pull me. If you do, I'll get emotional and might need surgery even sooner. Your son will die quicker. These days, helping Eric with his rehab, my strength had increased. Besides, Diana had always lived a pampered life, her body weak. She couldn't even struggle free. Unable to break free, Diana was furious but also a bit pleased. Cynthia, I knew you were faking. If your heart was failing, how could you be this strong? You don't look like a patient at all. What are you all standing around for? Take her for a checkup. Saying this, the doctors moved to grab May, squeezed her hand tighter, casting a cold look at the doctors. Stay back. But Diana thought I was scared and sneered. What are you waiting for? She's just a vixen. If you can't even do this, I'll have William fire all of you. I wasn't afraid of the checkup, but better to avoid unnecessary trouble. I also addressed the doctors. You see how William treats me and her. If anything happens to me, how will you answer to William? The doctors halted, exchanging uncertain glances, not daring to move forward. Between Diana and me, as mere workers, they couldn't afford to offend either. Seeing them hesitate, Diana's face turned darker. You all. I took the opportunity to let her go. Freeing herself, Diana snapped at the doctors. You're all fired. Watching Diana's frantic outburst, I felt satisfied and reminded her, watch your image. If William sees you like this, what will he think? Married a shrew with great effort. Enough. At that moment, William's stern voice came from the hallway. I looked up to see his tall figure standing at the door. But I also saw a small hand slip past outside. I smiled and immediately put on a weak facade. William, why are you here? Diana stiffened and also looked at the door, smiling softly. William, you came just in time. These doctors are useless and not fit to take care of Cynthia. We should replace them. Unexpectedly, William ignored her, walked past her to my side, supported me, and asked with concern, how are you? Did they disturb you? I leaned on William and caught a glimpse of Diana's incredulous expression. She couldn't believe it. William had loved her for so many years, was crazy about her, and would do anything for her at a mere signal. Why was he suddenly ignoring her now? I shook my head. It's okay. William, did you find them? He nodded and signaled to bring them in. No way. Diana's voice trembled. I noticed her anxious and worried look when she heard the word found. Our eyes were all on the door. The bodyguard brought in an 8-year-old boy named Henry. I looked him over, an 8-year-old, tall for his age, already about 5 feet. He was handsome. One could easily see that he'd grow up to charm many girls. As soon as Henry came in, he ran straight to Diana. Mom. Diana looked worried. Why didn't you stay with your dad? Why did you come out? Henry replied, this uncle said he would bring me to you. Mom, why haven't you come to see me and Dad for so long? Children's words are always the most innocent. Diana stopped him and then looked pleadingly at William. William, believe me. Let Cynthia go back. She's faking her illness. Weakly, I said, I've been through this. I understand your feelings, so you hope I'm faking it. But who would curse themselves? Cynthia. Diana started, but William cut her off coldly. Where do you think I found your son? At these words, a guilty look flashed across Diana's face. I had felt William was in a bad mood ever since he came in. His whole body exuded coldness. Seeing Diana's guilty expression, I started to understand. Before Diana could speak, William continued, I found them in Philadelphia, right under my nose. Diana flinched, her complexion pale, moved closer to William, and grabbed his hand, trying to explain. William, don't talk in front of Cynthia. I can explain. But William wasn't listening. He forcefully pushed her away. Diana, you said you divorced your husband and got married out of necessity. Which part is true? Diana fell to the ground. But even in her fall, she looked stunning, tearfully gazing at William. I didn't mean to. Any other man, seeing her so frail, might have forgiven her. But William wasn't just any man. I spoke up. Diana, are you a bigamist? Diana's attention shifted to me. She pointed at me angrily. Is it you? You knew all along. You told William. Seeing Diana charge at me, I weakly hid in William's arms. William, I'm scared. William pushed her away, ordered the doctor, schedule the surgery as soon as possible. Diana fainted from rage when she heard this. William didn't care and ordered the guards to take her away. When Diana woke up, she rushed to the emergency room. I had just finished my surgery, and on the bed next to me lay Diana's son, covered with a white cloth, his face pale, eyes tightly shut. Diana staggered to Henry's side, trembling, checking his breath with 2 fingers, and confirming it with a sorrowful look. I told her, my condolences. Diana, eyes red, looked at me. Cynthia, you're so cruel. My son was only 8. You knew he couldn't survive this surgery without a heart. You killed him. Why did it have to be my son out of so many hearts in the world? Listening to her screams, I felt a twinge of sadness. So, you knew. Diana was stunned. I got off the operating table, appearing surprised. Maybe she was wondering why I could move so soon after surgery. Step by step, I approached her, eyes red, voice calm. You knew a child couldn't survive this surgery. You knew the only outcome was her dying on the table. But you still wanted my Lucy to donate her bone marrow. You were deliberately trying to kill her. Fear flashed in Diana's eyes, but she vehemently said, so what if it was on purpose? Her father didn't love her, her mother couldn't protect her. What's the point of such a life? But I'm different. People expect me to live. I knew from the start that Lucy's bone marrow matched mine. Knowing she was William's daughter, I knew that by playing a few tricks, I could make him willingly give the child to me. But I didn't expect you to get pregnant. I couldn't wait that long. My family was abroad, so I had to do something about your unborn child. Her words stabbed into my lungs like knives. I looked up to the observation room on the second floor, where William stood in the shadows. William, you heard everything. This is how your beloved woman hurt you. I had seen William standing there since Diana came in, but I hadn't said anything to let her see this drama play out. Diana, upon hearing my words, looked up, her face growing paler. She saw William in the observation room. After a while, William walked down and came in front of us. Diana still hoped William hadn't heard earlier. She rushed to him, holding his hand and trying to explain, William, I was just too sad from losing my son. I didn't mean it. I love you. But William pushed her away, and said coldly, these years, you often disappear for days claiming you're traveling. Do you want me to reveal where you've actually been? Listening to their confrontation, I let out a cold laugh. William's attention shifted to me. He walked over, his eyes deep and dark. He was clearly angry, with his lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't say a word. You were never sick. You've been lying to me? I choked up as I spoke, yes, you have. My eyes fell on Diana behind him. Smiling, I continued, she's a good teacher. I've learned well, haven't I? William grabbed my hand, looking devastated. How could you lie to me? Because you're naive and pathetic. Did you never think I was faking it? Why did I suddenly come back to you? I sneered internally as I saw William's sad expression. You didn't think that, because you're arrogant. You believed I couldn't live without you, that I couldn't love someone else, that I would definitely come back to you. You were wrong. William lowered his gaze, voice hoarse. No, you love me. Otherwise, why would you put so much effort into deceiving me? You hate me so much, how could you endure staying by my side? He seemed to convince himself, looking at me with deep affection. Cynthia, we've already traded a life for a life. Let's start over. We can be just like before, and we can still have children. Children were my Achilles heel. I felt a sharp pain in my chest and screamed, face reddened, William, you don't deserve to have children for the rest of your life. William's face turned pale. Diana let out a bitter laugh. William, you heartless, cruel man. You took my son's life, so don't expect to have children of your own. While we were distracted, Diana suddenly picked up a scalpel and charged at me. Cynthia, pay for my son's life. Her face twisted with rage. I watched in horror as she rushed at me with the scalpel. Before I could react, William stepped in front of me and the scalpel stabbed into his hand. The sound of the blade cutting into flesh. I watched, stunned, as blood flowed from William's arm. Diana, frustrated she hadn't harmed me, prepared to strike again, but the operating room door suddenly burst open. Freeze. The operating room is surrounded by police. Eric led the way in. He came over to me, separating William and me, and asked worriedly, Are you okay? I shook my head and smiled faintly, I'm fine. Diana was arrested for assault. She tried to accuse me. Officer, I want to report Cynthia. She killed my son. Arrest her. I took a deep breath. Too bad, I didn't actually have heart failure. I couldn't have killed your son. He's just under anesthesia and will wake up when it wears off. But your son will now have a mother who's been to jail. Diana, enjoy your time in prison. Diana was taken away in disgrace. Seeing her led away, the frustration inside me eased significantly. Eric supported me by the shoulders, ready to leave. Then, behind me, I heard William's hoarse, longing call, "Cynthia, don't go." I paused. Eric stopped with me. Slowly, I turned to see William clutching his wound, dark red blood dripping down, his face ashen. He rarely appeared this vulnerable, which evoked sympathy. "Don't go with Eric." But I wasn't falling for it anymore. "William, don't come near me again." I left him with that and walked away with Eric. Looking out the window, I realized we weren't heading to his place. "Where are we going?" Eric replied, "You'll know when we get there." I stayed silent, letting the silence fill the car. Eric chuckled, "You trust me so much. Aren't you afraid I'd sell you?" He joked, but I turned to him seriously, "You helped me. Even if you sold me, I'd accept it." My plan started at the cemetery. If Diana hadn't disturbed my family's peace after their death, I wouldn't have sought revenge. And all of this was thanks to Eric's help. He bribed the doctors at the White's private hospital, forged my medical records, and got the black market heart for me. As we drove in silence, Eric glanced at me, a hint of darkness in his eyes. He then smirked softly. Soon, we arrived. It was a cemetery, well managed, surrounded by hills, very serene, a good place. Eric brought me to my parents' new gravestones. "I arranged a new cemetery for your parents. It's well managed, no one will disturb their peace anymore." I felt nothing but gratitude. My eyes welled up, tears streaming down. "Thank you." Eric handed me a clean handkerchief. I took it, wiping my tears. "Thank you." Eric looked at me gently. "There's no need for gratitude between us." I looked up at him, touched by his tenderness, feeling a bit uneasy. Having nothing to give, I could only accept his help. Facing him, I felt only inferiority. I wanted to distance myself. Pressing my lips together, I made a decision. "Eventually, I will repay you for these gravestones." Eric's gaze deepened, filled with a mix of pain. "Cynthia, you've changed. I know what you've been through made you feel inferior, but I never thought you were undeserving." My heart tightened at the fear he'd bring up feelings again. If he did, she'd have to reject him. But instead, he said, "Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Do you remember me asking you what your plans were after revenge? It's not too late to bring your life back on track now." Eric looked at the tombstone. "If your master and mistress were alive, they'd want you to have your own life." His words moved me deeply. I followed his gaze to the tombstone. In the photos, my parents seemed to be looking at me. After a while, I looked at Eric. "You're right, I need to start a new life." I quickly quit my job as Eric's caretaker. After all, Eric had recovered and could walk normally. Then, I started looking for a job. But Eric insisted on one thing. He still wanted me to live in his house. I sent my resume to many design studios in Philadelphia, but heard nothing back. I set up my easel by the pond and drew part of the mansion structure and some designs. But my spirit was down, and even my drawing felt half-hearted. Eric came home from work, saw me, and walked over. "What's wrong? You're spaced out. You're back." I smiled, putting down my brush, my lips forming a thin line. I sent out some resumes but got no replies. "Don't lose hope. You might hear back soon." I asked, "How long does it usually take your company to respond?" Eric thought for a moment. "Usually a day. For big recruitments, with more candidates, it's about 1 to 3 days." He sighed deeply. I wasn't expecting much, but just as Eric finished speaking, my computer pinged. It was an email. I turned to look and couldn't help reading the email out loud. "Thank you for sending your resume. It perfectly matches our company's needs. Please come for an interview tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. I looked at Eric, delighted. I was so excited, I hugged him. "That's awesome, I finally have an interview. I told you, someone would appreciate you." It wasn't until Eric's warm voice reached my ear that I realized what I'd done. I froze, quickly let go of him, and tidied my clothes. "Sorry, I was just really happy." "Eric, since it's good news, shouldn't we celebrate?" I nodded but decided to wait. "Once I pass the interview, I'll cook for you myself to thank you." If it weren't for your support, I wouldn't have bounced back. I'll be looking forward to it." We exchanged a smile. Then I had the motivation, urging Eric to leave so I could finish my drawing the next day. I went for the interview as scheduled. Eric had arranged a car to take me. But I received a message from William, "I'm hurt. How can you be so heartless and not even come to see me? These past few days, I've thought a lot. I made many mistakes. Forgive me and come to see me." William's message, which started with accusations and ended with humble pleas, only made me disgusted. Did he really think I could forget everything he did, forgive him, and feel pity for him? I blocked his number right away. My mood instantly lifted. I arrived at the company where I was interviewing. It was a small company, not very large, but I'd seen the work. Ziwa Architecture had done several famous projects. Though it seemed small, it was definitely a strong company. The receptionist greeted me warmly. "You must be Cynthia. You're even prettier than your photo. Please follow me." She led me to the boss's office. As I passed by the main office, I glanced around. The atmosphere seemed great. The colleagues got along well, very friendly. My fear subsided quite a bit. "Boss, the new interviewee is here." The receptionist's voice brought me back, and I entered the office, meeting the boss. The boss was a handsome young man, fair-skinned with curly chestnut hair, looking quite youthful. I was stunned when I saw him. The boss sat in his chair, gesturing to the seat opposite him, indicating I should sit. I sat down. "Introduce myself, I'm Mike, the founder of this architecture company." He asked me a few simple questions, then, "There are a few years missing in your resume. Did you not work between graduation and now?" I was prepared for this question and replied honestly, "I didn't work because I was raising children." "So now you're looking for work because the children are grown up?" I tried hard to suppress my urge to cry. "They've passed away." Mike quickly apologized. "I'm sorry." That's quite the way to make someone regret being born into this world. He felt terrible. Out of guilt, Mike handed me my resume. "Congratulations, you're hired." I was hired in the most inexplicable way, but I could tell it was out of guilt. As I was about to say something, he seemed to read my mind. "Don't get me wrong, I reviewed your resume and your submitted work. Your qualifications are more than adequate, and your appreciation for beauty aligns with mine. You aim high. The most crucial quality in our field is the appreciation of beauty, and above all, you're experienced." I felt relieved but had to tell him one more thing. I also did 3 years in prison. For what? Intentional injury. After hearing this, Mike asked glumly, "Will you hurt anyone again?" "No, I promise." With my assurance, Mike stood up and extended his hand. "All right, you're hired. Looking forward to working with you." Looking forward to it. Everything was set. I could start work the next day. But just as I left, I saw a familiar car parked downstairs, a Rolls-Royce. William had come to pick me up in it on my release day. My face turned grim. I pretended not to see anything and got into the car I came in. "Drive," I ordered. I thought William wouldn't follow if I ignored him. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, his car kept a deliberate distance behind mine. I clenched my fists, my expression stern. Only when we arrived at Eric's villa did I think William couldn't get in. According to our agreement, since I got the job, I would cook to thank Eric. Back when I wanted William to come home for dinner, I took cooking classes and found I had a talent for it. My cooking isn't far off from a 5-star chef's. It was 4 p.m. when I got home. In 2 hours, Eric would be back, just the right amount of time. I cooked a lavish meal and filled the table with dishes. When Eric arrived and saw me bringing dishes to the table, he asked, "Did you make this yourself?" I smiled and nodded. Eric said, "Looks like you found a job." "Yep," I replied. Eric took off his coat and sat at the dining table, glancing at the dishes. "All my favorites?" he asked. I looked at him, my gaze forthright. "I noticed you like these," I said. We had a delightful meal. The next day, I officially started work. On my way to the office, I sometimes saw William's car following me, but he never bothered me, so I ignored him and focused on my work. Sometimes Eric would pick me up after work. The company had a great atmosphere and I quickly got familiar with my colleagues. Mike handed me important projects from the start. I didn't refuse, wanting to test my abilities. I struggled a bit initially, but my colleagues helped, and I worked late till midnight. In the end, I did a great job and felt much more confident. A month passed quickly. One day, Mike announced, "Everyone, the Whites has a project. All the design firms are bidding, and we'll give it a shot too." I was surprised. "The Whites?" I asked. Mike said, "I need an assistant." My colleagues eagerly raised their hands. Only I stayed still, showing no reaction. I overheard them whisper, "The White CEO is supposed to be super handsome. Maybe we'll get a chance to see him." Noticing I wasn't joining in, they asked me, "Cynthia, don't you want to meet the White CEO?" I shook my head faintly. "No," I said. But Mike pointed at me immediately. "It's decided, Cynthia. It's you." I turned, looking at the finger aimed at me. I moved a bit to the left, but the finger followed. It was definitely me. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you work the hardest. If the project needs any overtime, it's all on you," Mike said, making a convincing case. My colleagues no longer saw it as a good thing. They all had skills, but their desire to see a handsome guy wasn't as strong as their desire to get off work. I hesitated. "Mike, maybe pick someone else. I'm afraid if you take me, we might not get the deal." But Mike didn't care about winning or losing. "While it's true I didn't aim to become this well known, I can't help but stand out if we fail. It's not a big deal." Before I could argue back, he quickly left. All right, that's settled then. I consoled myself that the Whites had numerous projects. It wasn't certain I'd run into William. 3 days later, Mike and I took our proposal to the Whites. We were led to the meeting room where our competition was also present. It was a top-tier company in the industry. I didn't expect to see a familiar face, the other company's representative. Dressed sharply in a black suit, with bold red lipstick, like she was out for blood. Her gaze landed on me, filled with malice. "Cynthia, didn't expect to see you here." Mike lazily asked, "You know each other?" I frowned and nodded. Yes, she was my college roommate, Amy. Memories of college flashed before me. I got into my parents' university, and many people knew me. But some thought I got in through connections. Amy spread rumors that I was seeing multiple people, seducing others' boyfriends, and leading an indecent life off campus. She even took my study abroad opportunity. Amy glanced at our nameplates on the table. For the Whites' convenience, there were nameplates indicating our companies. "Just a small firm, Cynthia. Back in college, you were the most promising in our department. How'd you end up here? Want to join our firm? I'll even mentor you, to repay for taking your study abroad slot." My tone was cold. "No thanks, I like it here." Amy wasn't fazed by my coldness, thinking I was just being stubborn. "Our firm is the best in the industry. I'm giving you a chance out of old ties." She didn't relent, so I didn't hold back either. "I don't know about your firm, but with someone like you, I doubt it's worth joining." Mike gave me a thumbs up. "Well said." Amy's previously smug face darkened immediately. "What are you proud of? The Whites is a big company. Anyone with sense can see they'll choose us." I said calmly, "It's the Whites' choice, not yours. We'll win on merit." But my calm demeanor irritated Amy even more. "It's different this time. You don't have your professor parents to back you up. I heard both your parents committed suicide out of guilt," she continued. "One manipulated female students under his position, the other covered for her husband. If I had parents who were such social scum, I'd really feel embarrassed to face people." Her words hit my most painful spot, like a needle scratching my heart. It hurt like hell. I looked at her coldly. "You can insult me, but bringing my parents into this is too much." Amy smirked. "Your parents did such things, and we can't talk about it?" My hands tightened on my knees, my lips pressed together, and my eyes reddened with anger. But then Mike's lazy voice chimed in, "I really can't stand you guys." Amy's icy stare turned to Mike. "What do you mean?" I also looked at Mike. He gave me a look I didn't understand, but I still loosened my grip. Mike, leaning on his hand, lazily retorted, "When you can't win an argument, you attack someone's parents. Even if my employee's parents did something shameful, it's nothing compared to how hateful you are." I felt a warmth inside. Amy couldn't out-argue the both of us and was furious. She finally gave me a vicious glare. "Cynthia, you're really good at seducing men to fight for you. But even if you can seduce men, that doesn't mean you have the skills. We're determined to win the Whites project." As soon as she said that, the conference room door opened. We all turned to look. Leading the group was a man in a tailored suit, with a stern face and an air of aloofness, shining among his assistants and staff. It was William. His gaze swept over me, and my heart tightened. In that moment, I understood the real reason for involving an external renovation company for the Whites project. I almost stood up from my chair. But I knew leaving abruptly would seem odd, so I forced myself to stay put. William took his seat at the head of the table. Since the chair swiveled, he turned directly towards me. I kept my head down, avoiding his gaze. Amy eagerly handed her proposal to William, with a supposedly professional and composed smile. "Mr. William, I am." But she was cut off by William. "Could you repeat what you just said in there?" Everyone, including me, was bewildered by William's question. Amy repeated, "Mr. William, I'd like to introduce my design proposal." "No need." William decisively refused. Amy's face fell, but then she pretended to be magnanimous. "Mr. William, let me introduce it anyway, so some people can be convinced they lost fair and square." I was the some people. I had no idea where Amy got the confidence that William's interruption meant she had already won. William then declared, "I don't want to work with someone as arrogant as you." Amy's face turned white. "Mr. William, why?" We all became background scenery at that moment. I clutched my pen tightly, wondering if it was really because Amy was too arrogant. I said nothing, but Amy suddenly pointed at me. "I know, it's Cynthia again. She must have seduced you. She's somewhat pretty, but Mr. William, you can't be that shallow." Everyone's expression changed. I looked displeased, speaking angrily. "Amy, after all these years, have you ever reflected on yourself? You offended William with your loose tongue. Don't blame me." Amy insisted, "Am I wrong? Since we came in, you two have been making eyes at each other. You were even kept by a rich man back then." I clenched my hands, but William's deep, authoritative voice cut her off. "Say one more word, and you can't stay at your company anymore." William's words were firm. Amy's face turned pale as the white security escorted her out unwillingly. This didn't affect William at all. "You guys go ahead." In the end, the Whites decided to work with us. As we left the Whites, I told Mike to go ahead, saying I had something to do, but really, I was going to find William. I went to the direct elevator to the CEO's office. Surprised, the password was still the one I set. I went straight to William's office. William had anticipated my arrival and cleared the place. No one was in the CEO's office. Looking at him, my eyes reddened, my voice choked. "You knew I'd come." William's gaze was fixed on me, cobalt blue eyes reflecting only my image. "Without this method, I couldn't have seen you. Anyone who didn't know would think he cared so much about me." I hardened my expression. "Don't use this way again. If you're involved in this project, I'll back out." William looked crushed by my decisive words. "Why? Can't we get back together?" Tears streamed down my face as I shouted, "William, when you did those things, even if you considered that maybe I'd be hurt, maybe I wouldn't forgive you, we wouldn't be here now." William seemed to understand my resolve. He knew he had wronged me before and could only try to make amends now. "I'm sorry, I was wrong, Cynthia. I really love you. It's been painful without you. And Diana is in jail. I made sure she experienced what you went through there. She can never harm our relationship again." I cried and shook my head, my eyes full of mockery. "It was never Diana's existence that ruined our relationship. It was your decisions that did. Who are you trying to blame now? In this life, all I have for you is hatred. No, perhaps one day, I won't even hate you anymore. To me, you'll just be a stranger." William's face went white, and he murmured, "No." I turned to leave, but William grabbed me. I shook him off forcefully and walked away. I went downstairs and took a moment to calm myself. I didn't expect to hear Mike's voice behind me. "Why are you crying?" Startled, I turned to look at him. "Why haven't you left?" "I was waiting for you. I realized you didn't drive here and it's quite far from our office." "Should I reimburse you for the cab fare?" Mike asked. "Do you know Mr. William?" I looked at him calmly and said, "Didn't I tell you I'd been to jail? The person I wanted to kill was him." I stabbed his left chest. If his heart wasn't on the right side, he'd be dead by now. My cold-blooded killer remark shocked Mike. Seeing his scared face, I burst into laughter. "All right, let's go." We drove back to the office and unexpectedly saw Eric's car downstairs. I got out of Mike's car and went to Eric. "What are you doing here?" Eric looked serious. "I found that girl who testified about the professor's misconduct." My face darkened. Everything was happening today. Eric continued. "After that event, she went abroad. It took some time to find her, but she's flying back today. We can still catch her." I immediately took leave from Mike and went to the airport with Eric. We arrived at the VIP lounge, and an airport staff led a stylishly dressed woman inside. Since the girl's face was blurred in the video back then, I couldn't recognize her. She looked unfamiliar. "Is it her?" I asked Eric. "Yes, it's her." Hearing his confirmation, I couldn't hold back. I rushed forward and grabbed her. "Why did you falsely accuse my father back then?" The girl looked panicked. "Who are you? Who accused your father?" "Don't talk nonsense, you're crazy." Calling me crazy, I decided to show her crazy. I tightened my grip on her neck. "I'm Cynthia. Professor John is my dad. I believe he wouldn't do such a thing. You ruined my family, yet you went abroad, got a huge scholarship, and live a happy life. What kind of justice is this? I want you to pay for my parents' death. Help me." The girl struggled to ask for help from people around us, but no one stepped forward. Finally, as she felt near death, she gave in. "Someone instructed me. It wasn't my idea." I then let her go. She collapsed on the floor, tears streaming down her face. "That person made me frame Professor John, promising to clear it up later. I never expected the professor would commit suicide. I didn't want that. I'm sorry. I've been tormented by this for years." Regardless of her willingness to admit it, we had the evidence and called the police. This matter also implicated William. When he was taken in for questioning, I made sure to be there. After today, my parents would be exonerated, and this girl would face the consequences. Those journalists who hounded my mother to death would also get what they deserve. Tears streamed down my face. "Mom, Dad, can you see this? I can finally clear your names. May you rest in peace." Eric supported me, comforting me all along. I held on to him, crying uncontrollably in his arms. After working hard, I finally managed to pay off Eric's mortgage. And on that day, Eric confessed his feelings. "I like you. From the first moment I saw you. Will you give us a chance?" "I will." When William was released, Eric and I were having our wedding. It was grander than William's wedding with Diana. Flowers, balloons, and a seaside venue, with seagulls soaring above, blessing Eric and me. The officiant asked me, "For richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, do you take Eric as your husband, forever and always?" I saw William in the crowd. He wore a suit, looking thinner than usual. His eyes were locked on Eric and me. I thought his eyes showed unwillingness and sorrow. But I had let go of my hatred and embraced a new life. I looked back at Eric with a big smile and loudly said, "I do." William's epilogue. I never expected to be taken to the police station for questioning, nor did I realize Cynthia was waiting for revenge this whole time. Back then, I just wanted to bring Lucy back and use some means, not expecting such irreversible consequences. These were the cracks that could never be mended between us. One wrong step led to another. When I got out and heard she was getting married, I rushed to the venue. I didn't know if I wanted to stop it or just see her one last time. But when I saw the happiness on her face, I finally abandoned the idea of ruining her wedding. I suddenly realized how long it had been since I last saw her smile like that since being with me. I recognized my mistakes. But forever losing her was my punishment.